All right, start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL from a bench perspective. I'm your host Ben, and this is your Week 36 review show. We had a fixture list in the midweek, and I'll be going over what happened with that as well. So leading off, and then there were two. So Liverpool do take themselves out of things. It's just Arsenal and City kind of going for the top spot now. And top four, still not guaranteed either. And maybe maybe because of what happened, I think Liverpool actually did kind of a backdoor into that. But they still had Spurs, or they still have Spurs and Villa to play for. And yeah, I think it was Aston Villa not beating Chelsea that kind of cemented it a little bit. But starting to not finish the season the way Klopp or the supporters Wally would have wanted or dreamed about. The storybook ending isn't coming to pass. But it is what it is. I think there's been I think from where they were in January, that overblew expectations to where they were at the start of the season. I think I've kind of mentioned that before. Really, the goal was to get back into Champions League, and then the owners, I thought, kind of same story as in the past. I thought they kind of let Klopp out to dry a little bit, and the only reason why this didn't crater even further, back in January, was because they got lucky. They got lucky that Kwanzaa turned out to be as good of a player as he is, because they didn't bring in another center back. They get lucky that Van Dijk and Kanate were at least somewhat healthy throughout the whole year. They lost Matip back in like October, and the only real other senior center back wasn't even a senior. Was this kid Kwanzaa, and he's turned out to be quite a nice gem. You lost Trent Alexander-Arnold, and lo and behold, you had someone like Bradley, who ended up kind of being pretty good for you. And the only kind of a critique I'll have is it's a shame that Klopp didn't trust someone like a Dan's or Bobby Clark the way he did with Bradley and Kwanzaa, and that maybe is kind of sealed their fate a little bit. You've lost all those injuries to attacking players, and for the most part, everyone else has returned back to the squad except for Jota. And as we've seen for the last basically month and a half. Liverpool aren't necessarily having issues, creating chances, but just not really putting them away. So they do go on to they were able to uh, beat Fulham last week. So they lost to Crystal Palace, beat Fulham, and in between that, they had to go away to Everton, and they did lose to Sean Dyche's Everton team. It actually could have been even worse than it was, because in the first, like, I don't know, 5 minutes or so, Allison brought down Calvert-Lewin. That could have been, I think it was only a yellow card, but I mean, he was the last man back. It was chalked off though, because he was offsides, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, they weren't really able to defend Calvert-Lewin the entire game, and they weren't able to defend set pieces, and they gave away a set piece to West Ham in the midweek as well. But yeah, it's not just that. I mean, yeah, the injuries are one thing. Klopp started to go in with strange lineups as well. Just seemed to kind of backfire. And no Gakpo was available to play versus Everton, because he was with his wife for the birth of his first child. So that's exciting for him. But they could have missed. They could have used him. And then Gakpo did start versus West Ham. Didn't have a terrible game, but I've never really liked him playing through the middle. And unfortunately, as well, with the Everton game, is Klopp seemed to pick two people out as who was responsible, who was to blame for that loss, and it looked to be Salah and Nunez as almost like uh, the two faces for that, which I didn't really like. And Klopp made a statement, sitting Nunez and Salah versus West Ham, and I don't think it was the right statement to make. So yeah, they took themselves out of it. It was probably already done and dusted anyways, but yeah, you getting only a point versus West Ham wasn't ideal, but at least the point itself was enough, along with what Villa did, to at least guarantee top four for next season. So that at least was the goal to start, and they were able to accomplish it. But something I'll get to later on is, whoever wins this title is probably not going to have 90 points. This was definitely gettable, and whether or not they cheap things up. There was a chance they went in for a Casado, back in the summer. They went in for a bid. It was accepted. They bid, 100 plus million for a midfielder, and once that was rejected, or after Caicedo decided to join Chelsea instead, it was very weird, because it almost seemed like they went back to penny pitching almost, and they brought in this Endo player, and Endo has been a good signing. He's 31 years old. I thought he had a good game against West Ham as well, but he is 31, and you can't necessarily rely on his legs every single game, and it seemed like that was what Liverpool were doing. So you didn't go out and get, bring in someone that they needed for that position. So you skipped on that, and I thought they were always weak. They were always one attacker short. Uh, and the only solution to that was to give Dan some more minutes than you did, and it was just very strange how we haven't seen him, and that has been unfortunate as well. And also, Bobby Clark, I thought was giving some good minutes, and since Szoboszlai and Gravenberch and Curtis Jones came back into the squad, he's been kind of given the back shoulder as well, which is kind of unfortunate. But it's not just a Liverpool podcast. Arsenal and City or the two teams kind of going for it, and the reason is they just keep winning, even in some, well, at least in City's case, anticlimactic ways. But in Arsenal's case, not so much. They had a 3-0 lead, and they made this an interesting 3-0 lead. The first half was very strange though because it didn't necessarily feel, I don't say deserved, because it's not like they were bad. But I mean, Spurs did have a bunch of chances, and it was very strange. They scored a goal as well, and it was chalked off for a very kind of skim offside call, and then Arsenal get basically the second goal that comes off some controversy where it looked like there was maybe a foul in the box where Spurs maybe could have had a penalty kick to make it 1-1 instead, and instead Saka immediately was able to get the second, and then Havertz was able to score on a second corner kick. So there you go, 3-0 lead. I don't think there was maybe two shots on goal. For those three goals, because first one was an own goal, two from set pieces, and one off a really good counter. But for the most part, Arsenal did not have a lot of the ball. I think Spurs had 70% of it, and it's not like it was done. I've seen a lot of people say that genius Arteta tactic. I don't necessarily think that was the case. I think Spurs were doing quite well to actually press Arsenal to go long. Raya wasn't necessarily great with his feet. I think he had something like a 60% pass accuracy, where Spurs keeper I think actually had 100% pass accuracy. But the interesting, well, and yeah, that actually showed up actually how Raya was able to help gift Spurs back into the game, and it was a very strange kind of first half. It didn't feel like a legit 3-0 lead. And it did feel like Spurs were at least were still dangerous, and Pochettino made some second half adjustments. It almost seemed like one of the adjustments was to just kind of get more bodies into the box, and one of those bodies was Christian Romero. And we got a couple of warning signs where he had a couple headers that just missed. He actually hit the post on a header on a free kick earlier in the first half, and then lo and behold, they get back into the game thanks to David Raya making a mistake and hits Christian Romero, a center back on Spurs that's in the area that then has a lot to do still. He still has to put that away, and he has a striker's finish on him. And then I think in the 80th minute, Declan Rice decides to volley to volley. I think it's Hoiberg into the into a region you're not really supposed to, but not really. It's not where the ball is either, and brings him down. It's an uncontroversial spot kick, and it's rewarded. And then Son does really well to finish, and then there you go. 10 minutes to go, where there was still a chance for this maybe to actually completely create around them. And to that point, it didn't really feel like Spurs got many looks after that. So Arsenal did very well from that point. It didn't they didn't allow the pressure to get to them. So I do think you can maybe give them credit there, because that was I don't think their fans enjoyed the final 10 minutes, but it didn't really seem like Arteta or any of the players really changed their demeanor. If they understood they still had a one goal lead, and they recognized as long as they stay compact and don't really make mistakes themselves, Spurs have to do something incredible, to score on them. And all the Spurs were really doing was just sending hopeful balls into the box, and for the most part, Raya was doing well to catch him early. And Spurs got a couple corner kicks kind of late, and weren't really able to do much on those either. So Arsenal, scored on the two corner kicks and also defended well on the corner kicks, and they get a massive 3 points to keep the pressure on City. They were able to play before Man City, so what would Man City do? No Holland, for the midweek, for the last couple of games. He wasn't able to play versus Brighton. They didn't need him versus Brighton, but against Forest, they kind of did. No Foden as well. That was kind of an interesting lineup news. So would there be a chance for Nottingham Forest? And I think in a very similar way with Arsenal, City started the first half very flat versus Forest, and Forest were a case of just not taking their chances as well. And then City didn't necessarily get a chance; they got a corner kick, and they score on the corner kick, and it's just kind of a little bit on Forest's kind of undoing because. Nicky Williams, blocks, and I guess a Jack Grealish cross. That's how they get the corner kick, and then Nico Williams doesn't go off. He tries to get some treatment, tries to stay on the field, or tries to still be available. That's when it looked like his hamstring had basically gone at that point, or some kind of he had stretched something where it didn't look like he would have been able to continue. That's when Nuno needed to be strong and needed to immediately make the change then and there, and he didn't. And so basically, what that meant is Forrest had to defend that corner kick down a player and there was also an interesting thing that City did where they actually had to play had Jeremy Doku and it was either Grealish or someone else that were kind of close to Kevin De Bruyne as well. So that and Forrest took the bait. So that took out two players to run to them, and so you're left with even less people to defend. The penalty box with. And Gvardiol makes a really good run, and I think he beats Murillo to get to the ball. Uh, and heads it in, and there you go. City with a 1-0 lead. Chris Wood had a couple of really big misses. The first one in the first half, one in the second half. This game easily could have been 2-1 to Forest, going into halftime, or even 2-1 early second half, and instead City make it 2 after Holland comes on. And a take that I really had after this game was. For the last few weeks, there's been a lot of discussion online. Are City actually better without Holland? And I've kind of I've played a part in that a little bit. I've been playing a little bit with that in my head. Uh, I mentioned last week maybe someone like a Harry Kane would have actually suited them a little bit better. I have made that argument before, but at least as far as whether Holland, you have Holland now, so you can take the Harry Kane out of the equation. With Holland or without him, on the roster, they're clearly better with Holland. It's there to, they're trying Alvarez here, and it just didn't seem like anyone was making runs at all when Kevin De Bruyne had the ball. And we saw maybe something similar versus Brighton. I thought City won that game comfortably 5-0, and they were very good out of possession. We were able to force Brighton into lots of turnovers. Brighton's own doing really, but I didn't really feel like City were necessarily spectacular in that game, even though they won it 5-0. One player that was spectacular was Kevin De Bruyne, though, and Kevin De Bruyne again showed up in this game, and it seemed like he was a different player when Holland came on. Holland was making these runs, and all of a sudden City looked different. I thought it was also a very good decision by Pep to leave Alvarez on after Holland came on. So what he did, he didn't just do like for like. He actually took off Jack Grealish. And it left left Alvarez to kind of play a little bit on the left and basically moved Bernardo Silva. I think he took off Doku as well and took off. What he did was he took off Grealish for Kovacic. So brought in someone next to Rodri because they were getting outworked in midfield in that first half, and then took off Doku for I guess Holland and basically moved Bernardo Silva to the right wing. And, that second half, after Holland came on, that was almost a vintage, City side, not the side that we've seen of late, where they've been very, very slow and lethargic. They were quite good, and they were quick at moving the ball and quick at striking upfield. That was, they're just not necessarily the City that we've already seen, and that City was, to me, title winning. That City was dangerous, not what we've seen lately. But Pep doesn't always like doing that. So we'll have to see if that changes or not. But we also had some top four news, and like I mentioned, we know what Spurs did. So how did Villa do? And they had a chance to maybe secure top four for themselves as well. And they got out to a 2-goal lead, even though it didn't really feel that real as well. Uh, Jackson scored on a very shaky offsides call that was chopped off, and then Jackson also had a header that basically hit the post. It was a free header. He probably could have done better with that. Chelsea had majority of the ball at Villa Park, and it was a very strange game. It was almost maybe almost like, as a tactic, almost on purpose. But it's very strange because you're at Villa Park and you're just allowing Chelsea to kind of bully you a little bit on your own pitch, and it doesn't really matter, but though because right before halftime. I think Amy Martinez is able to find Diaby, and Diaby is able to get Watkins, and then they basically find Rogers, and Rogers is able to slide something to beat Petrovic to the near post, and there you go, 2-0 lead. Didn't really feel earned or deserved, but it doesn't really matter. And then the changes happened. So Emi Martinez had to go off to start the halftime, and it's not necessarily the saves. Martinez probably could have gotten something better than Olsen on at least one of these. But the main thing is just with the ball at his feet. I mean, Robert Olsen just had no way to just is not at all the same kind of keeper. I don't really think there's a team that has a bigger drop off between their starter to their backup than Aston Villa, and it seems like I'm a little bit bitter because I do kind of blame Emi Martinez not playing in the final game of the season in 22 because it was Robert Olsen, and that's basically when City were able to just kind of any kind of shot they were able to get on goal basically went in. Not to sound like I still remember that game or anything, but yeah, it was a drop off, and basically they get Chelsea get back into the game because Villa are trying to play from the back. Robert Olsen doesn't want to, can't necessarily find feet. They're just kind of passing it into some danger, and Chelsea get the turnover, and then I think it's Madueke who's able to put it home, and then for the second goal, it's a worldie by Conor Gallagher. To be fair to him, he got some stick, not just from me, but I think from a lot of people from how they played versus Arsenal and Chelsea. There you go. Pochettino was able to get them to respond, and they almost won it. Diazy was able to get something at the end on a corner kick, and it was just ruled out for a foul. But Villa do escape with a point, and that's not insignificant. That still helps them. Now Spurs still have Man City and Liverpool to play, so that always helps Villa as well. But Spurs are basically they're close on points, and really what it is Spurs I think have a game in hand, but the game in hand is Man City. So we'll see how that works out or not. Still a chance. Still a chance dropped for Aston Villa and Unai Emery. I know it could have been a disaster, and it wasn't. But you have the 2-goal lead. You probably would have wanted to seal that out. Another thing that happened was Tielemans had to go out, and just Villa would just. I think it's the worst side that I've seen when it comes to just being able to keep the ball and keep it moving. They're just very reliant on just being a full counter team. And Yeah, it was a little concerning, but we'll see how they end the rest of the season. They were so good versus Bournemouth, and they weren't able to necessarily. A week ago, they weren't able to carry that momentum here, and then the relegation picture is really starting to finally clear up. So four teams basically vying for one spot, and well, maybe only three teams because one of those teams sealed their fate officially after Sheffield lost to Newcastle. Sheffield really did start to give things a go towards the end, but just wasn't enough. Just sometimes that is all it takes. It's not just about effort; it's about quality or not. Because they had the lead versus Man United in the midweek as well, and Man United basically was able to kind of pile it on after getting it back, and then Newcastle was kind of the same thing. There were a couple of really. You want to say maybe four of the last 5 or 6 games that Sheffield played, they got the first goal. But it doesn't matter because one of the worst defenses that's ever graced the league just kept showing up, and they just couldn't keep people out. It happened even with Burnley, where they were able to get back in, made it 2-1, and they ended up losing I think 4-1 in that game. And this game was kind of the same thing. Now Newcastle are different class than Burnley, and basically it was the same kind of outcome. So Sheffield are the first to officially pin themselves in, probably what we expected. But there's still, it is very crazy how the table is because Luton, Burnley, and Forest are all within like 3 or 4 points of each other. I think Forest actually have a game in hand. Uh, but the Forest game of hand, I think, it's not Man City. The Forest game of hand is, I think, it's Sheffield. So Sheffield have nothing to play for. Does that help Forest or not? Another thing that's very interesting is Forest still have that appeal. Do they get points back, or do they actually lose even more points? And that needs to be kind of sorted out before before any of these games happen because what's very interesting is Burnley and Nottingham Forest play each other on the last day of the season. I think it's at Burnley as well. And how is that setting up to be a blockbuster? But Luton still have a opportunity as well. And they had a massive opportunity versus Wolves. A Wolves side that hasn't have anything to play for. Now, Wolves have been on the back of a lot of losses in a row, but they've had their squad decimated, and unfortunately for Luton, Wolves were able to get Mateus Cunha back, and were able to get someone like Wangley Chan back, and that definitely factored in. They ended up losing 2-1. It was 2-0, and they actually got something back with Morris, but you know, both Mateus Cunha and Wang Chan, were responsible for really both goals. It's just the kind of running. It's not something that they can match, and it's basically the attacking quality that helps create those goals, and those goals would not have happened without those players being available. So Luton do not get any luck. The one thing you can say is they did get a couple of bodies back themselves. They had Adebayo. That was able to come on and to give them some minutes. So he's back. Him and Morris, maybe the tag team duo that was so good for them back in December and January and somewhat of February before he got hurt. He could maybe help them as well. And again, I think it's only a 2-point difference between those three teams. So and two of them have to go. So we'll see. We'll see how this pans out towards the end. And the reason why Burnley is still got a chance is Burnley on like a 6-game winning streak or a 6-game non-losing streak, basically, because a lot of these are draws. Get another draw and get a draw at away to Old Trafford, where they get a point thanks to a very late PK by Amdouni beating Onana. Onana made a little bit of a mess of things, at least on that. But before that, Onana kept them in the game. So people have been going after Onana a little bit. I don't really know how many keepers would have been able to keep so many of these shots on goal. Man United have a relegation level of defense, and they've had it the entire year. And that was before even the injuries at the back kind of really did just pencil them in to being mediocre. But since it's been a mix shift of Casemiro and Maguire as like your starting center backs week in and week out. Any team can fancy themselves, and Burnley certainly did. And frankly, Burnley had 18 shots. We saw last week with Coventry City, a championship side that's not going to be in the playoffs. So just a mid tier ish or decent championship side was able to get kind of the same amount of production against this back line. Man United are going to want the season to end and want to take a scalpel to this roster when this is finally said and done. Now, injuries are one thing. They were poor even before the injuries. Just the way that they've built the squad has not been great. It's been very imbalanced. But so there you go. Burnley still keep themselves alive. And away to Old Trafford isn't an easy spot. That is to be said as well. But they able to get something here, and then that's kind of it. Everyone's really secured. Everton and Brentford a couple of months ago would have been seen as like this blockbuster must-watch game, and because both have their fate already secured, this was almost a like preseason, summer friendly. It was very very dull, and Everton do go on to win 1-0 thanks to a goal by Idrissa Gueye, and then Palace and Fulham played also to a 1-1 draw. The one thing to touch on here was the goal that Palace, dr- dr- uh, equalized on was a spectacular hit by Jeffrey Schlupp. Maybe goal of the weekend, to be honest. And then Brighton and Bournemouth kind of squared up at the last on the last game. It happened, sandwiched on Sunday, where no one was really paying attention. Probably a good thing for De Zerbi, and De Zerbi did not have a good week. Suffered a heavy defeat to City in the midweek, and then lost 3-0 to Bournemouth. De Zerbi has had injury issues all year as well. And you really saw that with what he's had to do at the left back spot. He's trying to fit in this new signing that they brought in, this youngster Valentin Barco. I don't really know if he's even a fullback by trade. He looks like a clever kind of a midfielder potentially, but he's hadn't to fit someone to play in the spot because no Estupian, no Tyreek Lamptey now, and yeah, he actually was at fault for a couple of these goals, and Bournemouth didn't have a lot of the ball, so I mean, Brighton at least in that respect, Bournemouth were really good at just quick striking, and credit to really Aliola. One of the very interesting stories of the year really has been Gary O'Neill being a success for Wolves and Aliola coming in being equally or maybe even more of a success for Bournemouth, and Bournemouth's higher office kind of recognized that they thought they needed to. Uh, I guess, improve or upgrade from what O'Neal offered, and maybe they were right. I was questioning their decisions, and back in October, I was really questioning maybe they should move off him, and it's a good thing they didn't listen to me. I think I saw that since like November, or since maybe I guess like the turn of the year, only like 5 teams have gotten more points than Bournemouth. Bournemouth have a chance to actually finish in the top 10. We'll see if they actually do or not. After being last in the table back in mid October. So it took a while for people to for players to, I guess, learn how to play a little bit differently. And another thing too is it took a while for them to get healthy. That said, as well, and they've been flying. Solanke's had a fantastic season. Didn't necessarily contribute in this game, but yeah, he's had a fantastic season for them as well. And there you go. That's where we are. And I will get started with the North London derby. And Arsenal and Spurs. Arsenal do go on to win 3-2. Goals from Hoiberg with an own goal, then Saka. A little controversy with the Saka one, and then Havertz, and then basically, Raya, David Raya kind of, brings Spurs back in the game, gives them a little belief, and Romero takes it, and then Son with a PK, and then that's where we ended. And the first game, had an entertaining 2-2 draw to it. Usually, this game does have some pretty good dramas, so that does have some excitement, and it took a while for us to get there, but we finally get it as well. And this game delivered again as well. And so Arsenal were at full strength, really, for the first time all season. You saw it on display versus Chelsea. Thomas Partey is back fit and back able to be in the starting 11. And you're seeing a little bit what Arteta had in mind for Partey. You're seeing Partey and Rice played together. It's not really hurting them. And you're seeing Odegaard having a little more freedom. And then, really, for the last, since I want to say like January or so, the main thing has been finally Arteta has had his vision has come to fruition, I guess I can say, with Kai Havertz, where you just didn't know how this was really going to work. Oh, Kai Havertz and Jesus are kind of really the same kind of player. Are they going to be able to play together? In the beginning, Arteta was trying that and it wasn't working. And Arteta has figured out you don't need to play Jesus. You can just have Havertz kind of just do. Havertz is basically a taller and better Jesus, essentially. And what he does is he's he's clever at, dropping in the midfield, kinda being an extra number, but really he's sneaky good at making runs where you don't really expect it to come from. And, you basically Arsenal get the 3rd goal because Kai Havertz makes a pretty good run that on the left side, and they overload, Pedro Porro's side, and, they end up, I think there's a cross that comes off, and basically they get a corner kick, from that, and then he's got the height, to help them win in that. And, really, that really has been the change. You don't want to necessarily say how sustainable this is, like, or repetitive or repeatable this is, because I do think most Arsenal fans, even if they win the league, are probably going to still want a striker. But at least you have started to see a little of what Ateta was thinking about before the season, and it's taken a while for them to finally get here. Rice in that in that single pivot spot wasn't really working, and he saw that. He started to play Jorginho there, but Jorginho can be gettable out of possession, and so once Party's been available, Party immediately comes back into the squad, and they needed him. Party played quite well in this game. He hasn't played many games, but he did play big here, and when he came on versus City in a couple of those cameos, he played well. And then with Spurs. Spurs had, Richarlison back on the bench. Pedro Porro finally good to go for them. They were without Udogie, and they had to play with Ben Davies, which I was thinking about it. If Udogie was playing, he's probably going to be very, very attack minded, and maybe just Saka is going to be able to go 1v1 with, I don't know, Van de Van, essentially. So maybe Ben Davies wasn't necessarily getting that forward, get that far forward. And Ben Davies was actually in decent position for Saka, and just Saka skinned him. So I don't necessarily know how much of a difference that was, but they another thing too is Spurs hadn't played a game in a while since that Newcastle drubbing, and so they had a little time to work on some things to get a little healthy, and it took a while for that to show up. But another thing too was Pochettino went with a very I would say like the wrong lineup, but I looked at it in the in the beginning of it, right before the game started. I didn't like it. Um, Betancourt and Hoiberg, played over Sarr and Basuma. I understand maybe Sarr and Basuma being left out because you figure maybe you're going to have a lot of the ball. Maybe you need someone to be able to, thread some passes in. But so that's where Betancourt or Hoiberg could come in. Maybe better passes on the ball. But I didn't really like Kulu being played over Brennan Johnson. I think Brennan Johnson offers you a little bit more on the right. I think you can get at Tamiyasu. But Kulishevsky wasn't doing that enough. I think Kulishevsky, when he cuts in, is kind of playing in Madison's role now, and it's awkward. I think it's almost repetitive. Madison did not have a good game as well, and then Son through the middle has not really worked versus these first good teams. You can say maybe it's worked versus other teams, but because the spaces weren't really there for him, and they weren't really able to find him many touches in the box. And you played Werner instead. Werner, you can't really go at him that much, but Werner had to go off, and that basically the second half they were better when Son was back on the left wing, his preferred spot. And they were better when Richarlison was played an actual striker to play some stuff into the box, because it was a very strange game where Spurs had so much of the ball. And yeah, it helped out because Arsenal got the early goal lead, and basically they were fine with sitting back and fine defending very deep into blocks, and basically fine with allowing the ball to go out wide. Who cares? You don't really have anyone to cross anything into. In the second half, that was different. But I thought the first half they struggled a little bit. Bettencourt and Hoiberg versus Rice and Party. You don't really like the look of that. And the other thing too is just basically they get the second goal because Hoiberg doesn't track Saka's run. Hoiberg and Werner just basically let Saka just walk in front of him, and then when Kai Havertz gets on the ball, Saka's able to go on a sprint, and Ben Davies is isolated 1v1. And so, there was just I didn't really like Sarr not being picked, and I thought it was a mistake, and we kind of saw it, pan out a little bit. So, I don't wanna spend, a terrible amount of time talking about this, but I do wanna go a little bit into detail, at least with this one, maybe in the City game, and then I'll probably, speed up with everything else. But, 2 minutes in, you kind of see the problem. So Odegaard's able to outsprint Højbjerg, to a ball, and again, we're sorry, I don't think that happens, but also we're struggling a little bit early. They're passing with center backs. Gabriel tries to find Partey, but he's immediately assaulted by Betancourt. Spurs break, but Arsenal are able to recover well. And then, really, the first 10 minutes, in the first 10 minutes, we finally see Arsenal venture forward for the first time. So Partey does well to turn under pressure, find Saka. They eventually work the ball around the box and basically draw a free kick. And then Spurs do well to win a couple possessions back in a row. So they're pressing. Their out of possession structure was quite good. Nothing happens here. That I think Madison basically gets a shot that kind of goes out of that goes into the stands. But at least they're doing well to at least turn Arsenal over. And then, but all of a sudden, Arsenal do start to get a couple more looks going forward. So first, Arsenal actually score, and Havertz is just a little bit offside. But Madison is lax in marking Partey. Partey then picks Odegaard, making a run behind. Havertz then makes a run, kind of joining him, and Odegaard's able to play to Havertz. Havertz finishes well. Actually, I think Odegaard is the one offside. But here's the warning. And then here you have another one where Spurs take a free kick very weirdly. No one's on the ball. Romero passes it backwards to Vicario. Vicario plays it to Romero, who passes it back to I guess Vicario under pressure. Vicario then passes it to Van de Ven. He's under pressure by Saka. There was a mistake, turnover, shot blocked, and corner kick. So two very early kind of warning signs back to back, where it took a while for Arsenal to kind of go into the game, but after about 10 minutes, they really did fly. And then in the 13th minute, or basically on that corner kick, they score. And that just came from Spurs just being a little too lackadaisical at the back. And Vicario and I think it's Van de Ven. Van de Ven was kind of put into a no man situation. He doesn't want to just boot it away. He wants to try to be brave and try to find feet, and he plays a bad pass. And Spur or Arsenal able to immediately break on it. And Havertz has to gets a look in the box, and it forces actually a pretty good block. Otherwise, this is probably a goal as well. And then, or it doesn't really matter because Arsenal do score on the corner kick, and so. Let's see. And it is pretty bad by Højbjerg, but another thing you see is it's fantastic delivery by Saka. But Højbjerg has to attack this either way, because Tomiyasu is right there, and Højbjerg is just you don't really like when someone's facing their goal. heading the ball, that way. You would like the position to be a little bit different, and Hoiberg has to attack it, and he doesn't get the height maybe he wanted. Another thing too is you see is Pedro Porro kind of jumps in front of him, so maybe he sees it late. So that probably blocked his vision a little bit. And also, Ben White is doing a really good job to just be annoyance to Vicario. And one thing I actually thought about even before this happened is pregame. I texted my group mates. One thing I was a little bit worried about is Arsenal are fantastic at scoring on corner kicks or set pieces this year. If there's been a vulnerability to Tottenham, it's kind of been this. It's been Vicario can be bullied a little bit in the box, and it kind of happened again here. Unfortunately, Vicario's been a great keeper. I'm not going to necessarily attack him there. Very good shot stopper, very impressive with his feet. But at least here is where he could improve a little bit. It's only 1 year, debut season into the league, and most people don't always have their best seasons. We can look at Onana, who's taken a while to who struggled a little bit, but here is where he does need to improve a little bit, and Pochettino probably recognizes it as well, because they've given a lot of goals this way. It's not just Arsenal. I remember there was a game versus Everton where basically they had fun bullying him in the box, and he just seemed uncomfortable, and he's been uncomfortable really all year. I think Newcastle made him uncomfortable. Newcastle scored on a corner kick just in the last game. And then Romero has a header off a corner kick as well. That just goes wide, and then Spurs also get a chance with Romero hitting the bar. So Ben White fouls Madison, free kick. No one's marking Romero, kind of at the back post, and it just shows really how small the margins are here, and because that's the difference in the game. Arsenal able to get their half chance to go in. Basically, it's an own goal, and here Romero had a chance to make it 1-1 and just hit the bar instead. It was very strange because Spurs were doing pretty well to actually press Arsenal to go long, win the ball back, break, get some cheap corner kicks, and then really the controversy happens. So Spurs do get a goal to square things up, thanks to a Van de Van finish. After a recycled corner kick was shot from distance, I think it's from Pora, ricochets off Tomiyasu, lands into Mickey Van de Ven's path, where he finishes it. But he is ruled to be offsides or to be in an offsides position. They look at it for a good 3 minutes. I don't really think it's clearly obvious either way. So maybe you just go with what the on-field decision was, which it was given. Maybe he's a little bit forward, but it's not an advantage. But next year they said they'll have semi-automatic, automated offsides technology. That'll finally, get us to stop, doing these stupid human error, human drawn lines because do you can't really see either way, to be honest. And it takes another thing too is it takes a touch off an Arsenal player, whether or not it's deliberate or not. I don't necessarily know if that factored in or not, but it's unlucky. And that's another thing too. These margins on how how this game was decided really were paper thin, and that's another example. Basically the sheath of the width of a paper probably was what kept him offsides or not, and things only got worse for Tottenham after that when it came to just misfortune. So here, things spiral out of control a little bit. So Spurs do well to keep the ball moving it side to side, finding Arsenal to kind of expend energy, chasing it. Another thing too is it's lulling him to sleep, and eventually Kulusevski is able to find himself free behind Tomiyasu, and Madison plays him the ball. Tomiyasu falls down, and then Kulu and Pedro Porro play off each other. Porro has a back heel to pass it back to Kulusevski. Trossard then clips him from behind, and he can't. Kulusevski can't keep his balance and falls to the ground. And then after that, Madison kind of falls down trying to buy something as well. But Arsenal after that are able to break up field. Rice does a very good job to quickly, find Saka. He does a very good pass here. Rice could have just booted this away, but Rice actually was quite good here. And Saka then finds Havertz. This is all, quickly done. And Havertz has the really good presence of mind to kind of just hold things up a little bit. But another thing too is Mickey Van de Ven is just kind of focused on where Havertz is. Basically, no one's really paying attention to where Saka is, and Havertz sees Saka just started all of a sudden sprint. He's Werner has allowed Saka to waltz in front of him, and so has uh, Højbjerg. And basically, Saka's able to sprint into an absolute massive space on the right channel. Havertz does a very good job to play it when he does because he gets that spot on as well. Saka's on sides. If Havertz waits just a millisecond later, he's not. But Saka still has a lot to do. Ben Davies is still in position to stop him, just as long as you don't let Saka shift the ball back onto his left foot. But the problem also is Davies is sprinting back. Davies isn't necessarily in the best position. Davies has to really sprint back to get back, and Saka recognizes it. And when Saka is able to cut around him, Ben Davies can't stop himself. So the momentum keep kind of keeps him going forward. He's not able to immediately stop his sprint, and Saka is able to benefit from that. But I do think Davies maybe could have done a better job to at least keep Saka to go down. Do your best to make Saka uh, go down the or towards the byline, not necessarily to allow him to cut across goal, because once he's able to get it onto his left foot, he's able to pick his corner. He's not going to miss. He's as good as anyone in the league, maybe anyone in Europe, on that kind of when he chops inside, picking out the corner, and he does it again. I think he actually scored a fantastic goal. Well, it was actually a better goal because I think it was a curler from distance, but a very similar manner in the first game where he had a wonderful little curler to beat Spurs. So Spurs had to have known about it. But there you go. You're playing Ben Davies here instead of you're starting first choice fullback. Maybe Udogi is actually able to sprint back and not be in that position. But who knows? It is a fantastic goal for Saka. Don't want to take anything away from him, who also looked probably the best he's looked in of quite some time versus Chelsea, where before it looked like he was actually running on fumes a little bit, and maybe he hasn't really had time to rest, but he looks invigorated again, and spectacular goal here. But it was also there was controversy in it. There's no doubt about it. Kulusevski looks to be clipped, and the clipped matters because I don't think he's looking to. I don't think he's looking to fall for contact to fall down. I think he's looking to stay on his feet. And he tries to. And maybe the problem is he doesn't go down immediately. He tries to stay on his feet and then he falls. But the thing I want to say about that is people don't like divers, but this is why they dive. Uh, Someone that tries to actually stay on their feet and is clipped and isn't rewarded with something. If Kulusevski dives after that clip, he probably does get it. So you can't have it two ways. I think we need to have a discussion about that. Um, but another thing too is there were multiple times to prevent this as well. With the poor the just waltzing back after you lose possession. There's still time to defend this, and everyone just kind of runs to the ball. No one pays attention to their marker, but it's okay. 2-0, you're still in the game. You played well to this point, just as long as it's not three, and they get three. So at the 37th minute, two becomes three thanks to Havertz, but Havertz is also brilliant in the beginning of this. It looks like he's going to lose the ball, and he's got two people around him. So I think it's Romero and Højbjerg, and Havertz he's stronger, and he's able to find Odegaard the ball before Højbjerg can get to him. If Sarr is here, I don't think this happens. So that's another kind of a highlight or bonus point to talk about that. And then Odegaard's able to pick out Trossard, and then Trossard has the break, or it looks like Arsenal have the break, and then Trossard goes to out to ball goes out for a corner kick. Rice takes it, and Havertz all alone, free header, and there you go. But it's a clever run by Havertz. It looks like a training ground play, so everyone has to line up in a line. Havertz is the last man on the back. Kulusevski is kind of picked, or it's almost like a pick play. Kulusevski can't really follow. He basically runs into a teammate, and Havertz is able to just kind of follows the ball and able to get ahead on it. And then right before the end of the half, there was a really good Son chance where one of the few times where they were able to actually get Arsenal getting behind Arsenal's line. Pedro Porro does a very good job. There's no pressure on him. He looks up. He floats a very good ball into the box. Son controls it, but he rushes to finish and just hits it high. He probably could have scored this. He has scored something like this in the past, so it was a very strange feeling because it didn't necessarily feel like this was a 3-0 kind of game. Arsenal didn't come out of the blocks really pressing much. They almost set up to kind of play without the ball. But another thing too was Spurs were just very good at making Raya go long and turning Arsenal over. But Spurs were also playing without a striker, and that showed up. When Arsenal were in pretty good defensive positions, Arsenal, I mean Spurs, Tottenham, were not really able to penetrate that much. And I thought it was very good by Arteta playing both Havertz, playing both Declan Rice and party together because they were very good at basically denying Madison the ball in the middle at all. Madison was almost an afterthought in the entire game, and so I mean, whether or not that was the reason behind it, or that was just something that just benefited by doing that, that is what happened. But another thing too was Spurs were playing into this a little bit by just they kept pushing people forward, and by doing that, you're just allowing you're leaving space just in case you do kind of turn the ball over. You have 70% of the ball, but that's not 100%. So, that 30%, Arsenal were quickly getting it, and they were seeing, hey, the fullbacks are completely out wide. The fullbacks completely out of possession. There's a lot of space in the back. Now, Spurs do have Mickey Van de Ven, but Romero is not nearly as fleet of foot. When Pedro Porro is all the way up trying to do some stuff, you don't really have a way you can't, defend both sides basically. Arsenal really good at kind of attacking that kind of space. So it was a very bizarre first half. The two set pieces were the goals, and then a counter after a little bit of a blown call. Arsenal were flat, but it doesn't really matter. But another thing that I mentioned it before, Raya was very interesting because he was brought in. He was supposed to be brought in to be good with his feet, and he had 60% pass accuracy that half. Vicario was 100% for about the same amount of touches, and it was interesting how they were using Havertz. They weren't just having him just kind of being in a midfield. They weren't even asking him to really be a striker. They were asking him to almost kind of play with Trossard to kind of overload that left side. They were running away from Van de Ven's side, attacking Pedro Porra, and with Spurs, blown chances. Not just with the they were unlucky with the VAR decision going against them. They were unlucky with the PK, but they also had chances as well. That Son chance is a chance. Romero hit the post after a set piece. So I just thought, on the other end, they were bullied on Arsenal's set pieces. So uh, that's kind of where we were at. And then another kind of note is I kind of mentioned it before. I didn't like the 11 Ange picked. I didn't, though not to necessarily repeat myself, I didn't understand why Saar didn't start. Brendan Johnson as well. Brendan Johnson did come on in the first half after Timo Werner ended up kind of doing something with his hamstring, which isn't great. Not great for Spurs. Also not great for him because Euros are on the way, and he's played well enough to at least warrant an invite. So you worry a little bit about that. Uh, but the main thing was just okay. You have Richarlison on the bench. You don't really want to risk him. I get, but man, was he really needed. It's felt like the last few weeks when he hasn't been able to play. The Spurs are just not able to. They're not playing with a striker, and when a team that's really good at defending and not really allowing a whole lot of space in behind, you really do need someone to at least either link up play or you need someone to be a presence into the box to help others, and they just don't have that when Richarlison's not playing. So the other so that's kind of where we're at, and then we did see some subs. So Betancourt off, Sark on, and Brennan Johnson comes on as I said. And so before that, though, Arsenal have another chance. It's another fantastic run where Havertz on the left side, and he's able to find Saka, floats a very good ball to him. For Saka forces a save, and so that was you're wondering, is it going to be an actual a blowout? Is it going to be a big number? And then Spurs start to offer some glimpses that it's not. So first, Romero has a header from close. Probably could have done better on as well because this is from close. And then Odegaard has a poor pass. Spurs have a breakaway again. Kulishevsky tries to buy a spot kick. The ref isn't having it, but there were warning signs. And then there were more chances for Spurs, or more changes. So Madison off, who didn't look himself. He hasn't looked himself for about a month now. With Charleston on, so there you go. Now you have a striker to aim something in the box. Son moves to left wing, preferred. Brendan Johnson moves to right wing. It was probably his preferred role as well. And Kulishevsky, I think, is better than Madison at the moment at the 10 spot. I think Kulishevsky offers you a bigger body. I don't think he can be bullied. I just think, too often Kulishevsky, when he's shifting onto his left foot, is already playing in that kind of 10 area, anyways. Another thing too is you see Basuma come on, so it almost seemed like they were just. It was a very strange 11, almost like Ange kind of handicapped himself, and he got better after the changes, and you see it with the goals rewarded. So 60th minute, 3-1, so Romero is trying to pick Richarlison out on a run. It kind of messes up on the pass. And it's awkward, and Saliba, but it's awkward for Saliba, so what he does is he passes it back to Raya. Romero upset of himself, so he sprints to kind of offer some token pressure to try to, make up for that a little bit. Maybe he's just trying to blow off some steam, and this probably doesn't it wasn't supposed to happen. But because Romero kind of lost his head a little bit, he sprints to offer some token pressure towards Raya, joining with Richarlison. So the two the two players sprinting towards the keeper, one's the center back and Richarlison, and Raya loses his head a little bit. He sees the pressure, is trying to, I think, play a pass to Odegaard or Rice, but what he does is I think he's trying to fit something with his left foot, and he just basically mishits it, hits it right to Romero, chests it down, and then picks the corner. Um, and then we have the 84th minute. They get back with the second goal. So finally, a good ball whipped in. Sarr here, shows he wasn't just someone to to bring on to win some duels. Showed some good quality on the ball here. Forced I think someone basically someone tries to boot it up and they aren't able to clear it. So it's a bit of a mess up. Ben Davies and then Declan Rice kind of go for it. And Davies brings Rice down to get a touch, and basically easy PK decisions on buries it. Arsenal had to sweat towards the end, but nothing really came from it. A couple corner kicks late, the Raya was able to deal with, or it didn't feel like he had a lot to worry about. One thing that was happening though after like the 70th minute, after they made it 3-1, before the second goal, is Spurs were starting to just send a lot of crosses into the box, and they were lifted, they were high, and Raya nothing was ever like put in with a lot of velocity on it. Now it's easier said than done because you don't really want to. You have to lift it over like the first defender, so it's not easy to get the spin right. But really, the first cross whipped in that actually did have a little bit of pace was that Saar cross, and that's basically where they got the PK. But a lot of these were just kind of hopeful from out wide, from distance, where Raya was able to see it from a pretty far distance, was able to come out and catch it, and he was doing a good job at least on that. So he had a bit of a mistake, or a big mistake, but was able to rectify it a little bit. But there you go. I mean, there are two ways to really look at this. Arsenal went into an intense game, everything on the line versus a heated rival at their away ground, score 3 goals, win 3-2. If Man City do that, is everyone having the same takes that they have here? So do you say, man, they almost crumbled, but the pressure's kind of getting to them. They're going to just fall apart the next game, or do you say resilient Arteta's men? They were able to regroup after the Son PK. You don't remember them having a lot of issues there. I mean, I do have a little doubt still that the Havertz as a striker thing, because I saw it kind of backfire versus Bayern Munich. But again, Bayern Munich, or maybe Bayern Munich would be challenging for the EPL title as well, even though they haven't necessarily done well in the German league. Uh, but we'll see. They at least they can still keep the pressure on Man City. All it'll take will be a slip up, and Man City still have to play the Spurs team as well. And unfortunately for them, this Spurs team might be, Ange might not necessarily make the same mistakes. So we'll see about that. They already drew, I think, 3-3 in a game, and Richarlison was a big part of that second half as well. So Richarlison, if he's fit and good to go, you'll be able to play him on his preferred left wing. Son usually does well versus Pep as well. So there's still reasons for Arsenal fans to still have some hope here. But that said, while City's opponents might be getting healthy, City looks to be getting healthy, getting Holland back, and he looked good. He looked good after a little rest, and as did De Bruyne, and they only missed Phil Foden in the Forest game for illness. So Pep has a lot of toys to play with as well. Um, I mean, as far as stats go, 2.4 xG for Tottenham, 1.3 for Arsenal. It doesn't really matter. 9 shots and only 3 on target. 15 shots for Tottenham, only 2 on target. So a lot of action really was on the goal kicks. Spurs being able to force Raya to go long. Arsenal weren't really able to turn Spurs over. The one time they actually did create a pretty good chance, but 4 big chances versus 3 as well. And then Spurs, like I said, 62% possession. What they end with, the first half it was 72%. Arsenal, 38 passes, 502, 90% pass accuracy, which is a very good number for an Arsenal team that's been as good as anyone really at forcing some turnovers. But again, it might have been just a tactic. They were just like, you got the 2 goal lead. Let them have the ball. See if they can, don't necessarily run at them because run at the ball. Don't try to press high because all you're doing is exploiting some other space elsewhere. Just play very compact. Make the spaces very small where you've got to thread something beautifully to get through us. And yeah, two ways to win. It doesn't have to always be pretty. They get 3 goals, so I don't think Arsenal and they get 3 points. So I don't think Arsenal fans care if it was pretty or not. Uh, anyway, the things to really talk about is Kai Havertz. One player that was quite good was him. Uh, and I think another thing too is he finally has pace to play with. He didn't have this at Chelsea. He's forced to play with like Yao Felix or maybe it was Mason Mount being forced out there. It was never. Yeah, I guess he had Sterling, but you didn't have someone like Saka, and he's enjoying someone that makes some runs ahead of him that he can he could drop in and be a creator. When Martinelli has played, he gotta have the same thing as well. And in a must win game, he gets a goal and assist, and really, again, the main form has changed since Oteta started playing him, kind of, singularly in that false nine, kind of sitting Jesus out. But Rice and Party as well. We haven't seen it often, but it's clicked in a few games that we've seen it. Now, in here, they weren't really great in possession, but it was really the recoveries. Both made key recoveries, key tackles in that second half, where Spurs looked to be in pretty good positions. And it also, by playing him this way, you allowed Odegaard to play a little more freedom. Yeah, it was interesting to see. We haven't seen it much, and I think our party is probably going to be out the door. I think Jorginho as well. So that probably is going to be where Arsenal look as far as reinforcements in the summertime, because it doesn't. I don't really think Rice in that little spot works the best. But we'll have to see if. And then another point to say is no Holland, so they don't have a 20 goal plus striker on their team. But what they do have, they do have set pieces, and they're the number one team when it comes to set pieces. So the only kind of lasting note is Bournemouth away for their next game. It's the early game. It's Bournemouth don't really have anything to play for. Arsenal have a chance to set the weekend, set the tone for the weekend. So you play before Man City, play. So there's a chance to put some pressure, but with that comes with pressure. And a note I had was in college football, this would be like a team having to play like away to Nebraska the week before, having to play Penn State. Or I guess like Big Ten terms, or you could use other examples. But this would be what was called a trap game. And so we'll see if Arteta is able to, especially right after you've had this massive win over your rival. Uh, so will they be able to go to Bournemouth and have the same kind of mindset? For the most part, they've been able to do that all year. So there's no reason to really doubt them. But we'll have to see. Everyone's kind of looking at maybe Ten Hag at Old Trafford as the place where maybe Arsenal can slip up. Uh, it could have been Everton if Everton had to had their life on the line, but Everton are going to have nothing to play for the last game of the season either. I think it could be that Bournemouth game. But we'll have to see. And with Tottenham, again, couple this easily could have flipped with a couple decisions or a couple balls bouncing the other way, flipping. So it's not really like Spurs are that far away. But what you do see is Spurs don't have the depth. And they've been having to deal with defensive issues all year and injury issues all year. And another thing too is they actually had their first choice somewhat backlines, at least the center back pairing. But you're asking Mickey Van de Ven to just do so much 1v1 stuff. He's able to do it, but anytime he's running, he's 6'4", and it doesn't look like he's a natural six. It doesn't look like his body should be as fast as he is. And it just feels like that hamstring has to be on his last legs. The way like because there were a couple times where it looked like, oh, Martinelli's gonna be able to get behind, and this is gonna be a fast break, and then Mickey Van de Ven's actually able to make up ground on Martinelli, beat him to a ball, and then able to basically sweep the ball away and get Spurs back going again. And by doing that, you're able to get your fullbacks able to get extra bodies in the upfield. But I do think that is very risky, and they don't really have. They brought in someone like Dragerson in back in January. We got to see him a couple of times. It hasn't really been. Uh, he hasn't been able to impress the way other signings have. So I think that's something to think about. Another thing too is you got to work on your set pieces. That's been a problem for you all season. If you miss top four, it'll be because of that, and no real other reason. And again, no aerial threats in the first half. So I think it's kind of funny. I don't know if Romero decided to do it himself because he's 6'4", or Pochettino actually told him, hey, if you want to make a little run, into the box, kind of unmarked, we've got Van de Van back here that can help. Maybe we can have Page Rapport that actually, stays back. You want to kind of make a run and just try to be a number to try to disrupt him a little bit. Why don't you do it? Because we saw him getting into the box way more than we normally see for a center back. And So the center backs were important. Mentioned Van de Van and that, and then the changes were good. So I guess you can give Ange credit for at least that. Got maybe the first half wrong, got the second half right. And the only kind of negatives are Son through the middle doesn't work, and they need to figure out something whether it's with Charleston or maybe someone else, maybe bring in someone else. Kulishevsky and Madison clash too much. I already kind of talked about it. I like Brennan Johnson more, offers more variety to me on the right wing. He can go with his left foot or right foot. He can go down the touchline or cut in. The gamble to play Hoiberg over Saar did not work, and again, the defensive depth not great with no Udogi. Ben Davies is trying; he's trying his best, but you can't allow Saka to cut inside you when everyone knows what he's going to do, and he does it. So that's where we are for the first game. I figured it would take a little time. It always kind of does, and yeah, we're probably where you would expect. Moving on to Man City and Nottingham Forest. Man City do go on to win 2-0 with Gvardiol and Holland getting the second. And before that, big victory over Brighton in the midweek. Again, I don't really think they were as good as the score suggested because there were a lot of people praising them. Oh, we don't need Holland. Scored 4 goals, scored 5 goals, whatever it was. But I thought really what they were good at doing is they were good at forcing Brighton into mistakes. The first goal scored by Kevin De Bruyne was fantastic as well. Uh, Kind of a diving header. He came from nothing, and that's kind of another thing too. In title races, you need you guys really to come through for you. Not to belabor a point and oversimplify it, but one thing that I've noticed is Pep's always had that for him. You have people talk about machines. Man City are a machine, but machines can get you kind of you see this in like, NBA playoffs. It's kind of a similar thing. Machines can get you through a regular season or through the middle part, the meat part of the season, I guess you can say. But when you get down close to the bones, you need individuals to really star for you, to shine when everything really is on the line. And Pep's always had this with Yaya Toure in the beginning. It was David Silva for one of those championship years. It was Company that had a wonder goal that just shouldn't have happened versus Leicester City that kept Liverpool from winning an early title. Uh, Kevin De Bruyne in a year later, and then last year it was Gundogan for me. Gundogan just kept showing up with just timely goal after goal, and it wasn't Holland last year. It was Kevin De Bruyne, down the stretch. And here it's been Foden, and it's starting to be Kevin De Bruyne as well. And so that's kind of like the main thing is it's not you can get this by committee, but usually it's not. Usually you have someone on these title teams that actually really does just kind of take the game or take the title by the scruff of their neck, as they say. And Pep's always kind of had that, unfortunately. It's funny because he gets attacked for having machine like robotic football, but in the end, it really is individuals that end up helping him win all those awards. And then with Forest, I thought they had a chance coming into this. I didn't think they were great versus Brighton. No Holland, I thought made them different. No Foden, as you heard right before the game started. So you thought there's a chance here. I thought Forest were hard done by Everton, so that could either motivate them or can actually could be a distraction. But the way that they played, I don't really think it was a distraction. I just think Chris Wood just didn't go to sleep the night before because the one thing they said, I didn't even realize this. Chris Wood has apparently, coming into this game, had the best shot conversion rate of any striker in Europe. It was like over 35% since like the turn of January. Now you can always, have fun. You can manipulate stats to make a narrative however way you want. But that was impressive. But the way the way he played in this game, you wouldn't have imagined that because he missed 2 sitters. Unfortunately for them, Nottingham Forest played all right, and they did do something different. So first we see the Man City lineup. We saw Kyle Walker, Akanji, Ake, Gvardiol. So no John Stones again. Rodri basically by himself. Whether or not it's Kanji or Ake that's going to try to play with him in midfield, kind of inverted. That never has worked with either of those players. Gvardiol has really started to enjoy playing on the left, but again, teams are enjoying when he has the ball. as well. Now we have started to see him actually start to score a little bit, and that is something to get to later on. But Rodri really was oftentimes by himself. It was almost a four. It really was a 4-1-4-1 kind of shape. Bernardo Silva and Kevin De Bruyne in front to offer his the double tens, and then Doku on the right, Grealish on the left, and then Alvarez with a kind of a free roll. But what you saw is Bernardo Silva, Kevin De Bruyne, Alvarez, Grealish as well, all the same. Grealish will do well to keep with. Those three are the same kind of player. They're ball to feet kind of players, and maybe they're looking for other people in front of them to make runs for them. And you just didn't see it. Now maybe Doku is the one that offers you some of that pace, but it wasn't working. It was very, City had to move the ball upfield very, very slow, and when they did, Nottingham Forest were in pretty good positions. And the one thing that was interesting was Forest were just going long, and were fancying themselves versus Rodri. Rodri was getting double teamed, whether or not it was through Gibbs White, Dallow. Sometimes it was Chris Wood that was running to help out, and they were just bullying Rodri off the ball. And what you saw was their wide players, especially their fullbacks, Nico Williams and Oli Ana, were doing very good to get forward very quickly. Sometimes you see teams play in a back five, and you go, "Oh no, you can just sit in a shell all game." Forest weren't doing that. They were playing a front. They were playing a back three with Ana and Nico Williams to be almost like wingers, doing really good to get forward, and that's dangerous as well because you have Anthony Alenga and Callum Hudson-Odoi on the wings, further forward as your attacking options, who were also doing very well to do that too. And just too often, City were getting outnumbered a little bit on the wings. And, sometimes City don't really care about that, but with here, you have someone like Chris Wood who's really good at making some clever movements into the box. Wood got himself open a couple of times. And again, a different day, he gets 2 goals in his sleep. And he just had a couple really, really mishaps. Looking at the 11, Oleana is someone that really kept showing up over and over again with the kind of runs. He was able to actually get the better of Kyle Walker, which is not something you normally see. Maybe Kyle Walker has lost a little bit of that pace that people keep talking about, but Oleana was burning him. Getting past him, not just running past him, but running past him with the ball as well. And they are Forest were able to create a couple of looks that way. Nico Williams in the first minute of the game probably could have scored. Oleana does a really good job to sprint. Beats Rodri as well. To trying to recover on him. Basically, Oleana is able to outrun Doku, Rodri, and Kyle Walker. Gets right close to the byline. Has a cross. A back post. Nico Williams is there, and Nico Williams just doesn't do what he's supposed to do. Doesn't Basically kind of flubs his shot. If he gets good contact and it's blocked or saved, fair play. But he needed to bury that. And then Nico Williams had a second chance in the earlier in the first half that he also probably could have done better on, and instead just kind of went right to Ederson, pretty comfortable save, and then Nico Williams messes up. He does well to stop Jack Grealish getting a corner kick, but or getting a cross off. But all he does is he kind of pulls something, and again, it ends up factoring in. Forest have to play down a man, and they're you down a person to actually mark, and it ends up hurting you. And another thing that happened is the Chris Wood miss was bad, but Forrest had a couple of chances as well with some corner kicks where Ederson looked kind of vulnerable. Ederson actually got run into a little bit by, I think it's Niakate or it's Boli, and he actually hurt himself and he had to go off actually after the first half. But he was trying to go for the ball and was dropping it. And there was one chance I think at the very end. I think it's Muriel has a kind of backheels it. He has a really good chance to score and missed as well. So City were gettable. Nottingham Forest had more shots I think in the first half. I think they ended the game with more shots. So it was not vintage City side at all, and Pep maybe saw that Roger was getting a little isolated and roasted by himself. So what he did is he immediately took off. He brought on Kovacic to I don't remember if it was Grealish or Doku, but took off Grealish, brought on Kovacic, and changed a little bit how they were playing, and then finally he brought on Holland around the 50th minute or so, and after that change, City started to light up a little bit. So one thing I wanted to talk about was there has been a lot of talk. Are City better without Holland? And there's evidence now. The FA semifinal versus Chelsea, the extra time versus Real Madrid, where City didn't get a single look, and then this half. And so what Holland does is he occupies attention, and that allows creative players and behind him to have more time on the ball. Holland will always have center backs immediately onto him. And it won't usually be one; it'll usually be two. So you can't mark everyone, and so that's allowing someone else to have a little bit more freedom on the ball. And another thing too is he's always going to make a run to push a back line to run with him, so that'll allow space for Kevin De Bruyne and Foden's and Bernardo Silva's to get on the ball turn and have space to operate in because these the line is running with you. So you're leaving space for them to attack. And in the first half, Alvarez wasn't doing that. Alvarez was looking for the ball to his feet, and so it was just Kevin De Bruyne would get the ball, and there would just be no options. Where are you going to go? So first half there was very no one was really running. It was very stagnant. It was very slow. City sometimes Pep sometimes likes doing that. And sometimes like very meticulously moving the ball into the final third, and then you have 50 passes into the penalty area, and maybe you get a deflection to go in, and you score that way. But it was they weren't really getting many shots as well. So City were doing well to at least defend. So we get to the second half. Ederson off, Ortega on, and then it was Doku off for Kovacic. So it moves Bernardo Silva back to the right wing. He's not really offering much width, but what he's doing is he creates a massive mismatch. And in the second half, we saw basically him dropping in almost like a free roll, and what we saw was Kyle Walker basically being the just offering width a little bit on the right wing, but it wasn't really doing much from an attacking sense. But he was just kind of being there. So at least Oleana had to mark Kyle Walker, and Forest didn't have enough bodies to mark everyone when City had the ball upfield. So you saw Bernardo Silva being a little bit more influential in the second half after he moved a little bit to the right wing. Rodri had more protection with Kovacic, and basically Man City get the second goal because of Kovacic, which I'll get to. And so these were good changes, but Chris Wood again had a chance to make it 1-1. So a nice little box four shape here happens here with Forest creates between Danilo, Hudson-Odoi, Oleana, and Alenga. And it's a very clever ball by Aina to play Alenga in behind. City caught sleeping again. Alenga then has a nice carry to go past Walker. Walker's challenge. So again, Walker's beaten, and he keeps his head up. He squares it to Wood, and Wood just gets very weak contact. And then it's just cleared away. I think actually it's going in, even with the weak contact, because I don't think Ortega's getting there, but Gvardiol is there. And he right place, right time. So not only did Gvardiol score, he probably saved a goal here. And then Grealish comes off for Holland, and Alvarez moves to the left, and that's when City really do change. But one thing I do want to say before that is Hudson-Odoi, at least in that first half, was quite good. I mentioned Oleana. That connection he had with Oleana and Hudson-Odoi was quite good for them. And Hudson-Odoi has found his footing a little bit for since his move to Forest. So that's been good to see for Forest. But mentioned how finally City changed after Holland came on, and this is what I'm talking about. So just in the first couple of minutes, we have a chance where Kevin De Bruyne finds Alvarez. Shot goes over, but finally you see someone making a run ahead. And so you see Kevin De Bruyne get on the ball, has options in front of him this time. Holland has people dressed all over him. So Holland does well to what he does is he runs the ball. He actually does well to I guess a little link up play. He's able to get a flick to Kevin De Bruyne. Kevin De Bruyne then runs a little bit forward. Has Alvarez seeing that Alvarez is making a run and there's freedom for him to get in behind. He gets the ball and gets a decent shot off, and it's really the first time that all game that City have looked to kind of strike quicker upfield. They're not just slowly carrying it up where a team is already sat against you. No, they were looking to actually strike quickly. And then we have another chance where Muriel actually gets injured. It's a great ditch tackle, but he actually suffers some personal cost here. So a different City team once Holland came on, but also a different City team once Alvarez was given a different role. So here City have numbers next to Rodri. So first Bernardo Silva helps with so Alvarez gets the ball. I see Holland upfield trying to get behind Morello. The pass is a little bit off, but at least Alvarez, plays it. But Morello makes a mess of things as well. He intercepts it, but then has a heavy touch. Kevin De Bruyne and Alvarez are both right there to try to run onto the loose ball. Morello does well to at least recover with a very last-ditch tackle, because otherwise probably would have been a 3v1 breakaway where City just be able to pass it in. So Morello does well to recover here, but I think he hurts himself in the process. And then another thing too is Forest get a look after this. They're able to actually break up, and again, Alenga gets upfield, and Wood has another chance, but he just misses getting a touch. So Just these nearly again these thin lines. It happened again, and then we have a City chance where Kevin De Bruyne has a shot saved. But I want to touch on this a little bit as well. So Kovacic is alongside Rodri, not Akanji, not Ake, uh, or even Gvardiol. Kovacic gets a square ball by Rodri, then plays a nice forward ball, breaking the line. The first forward line finds Alvarez. Alvarez turns, finds Kevin De Bruyne. Haaland makes a run, and that draws for players to run with Haaland. So it leaves Kevin De Bruyne wide open, and Kevin De Bruyne gets a shot off, forces a good save. But again, you see just how having options ahead of you creates things. Having people, willing to make runs, open spaces for others, and it's why Holland is important. And City just don't reward it enough, in my opinion. But they do reward it here, and they do get the second with Holland. I figured it was only a matter of time after the changes, and it's a really good goal. It really is. So I talk about them being boring often, and I'm not wrong about that. But when they click, they're still really good. They're good on the eye. Good to watch. So here, Bernardo Silva again is a right winger, but he runs all the way next to Akanji. It's impossible for Oleana or Hudson-Odoi to know where to really go because you still also have Kyle Walker. So he runs into a spot where Aina or someone else doesn't really want to follow him. Gets on the ball, and Silva quickly squares it to Kovacic, who's next to his side. Danilo looks spun. He doesn't know who he's supposed to mark either. Morgan Gibbs White isn't marking anyone in this situation. There's three center backs who are really concerned with Holland further upfield. There's just no one near Kevin De Bruyne. Kovacic is able to find him with a nice little through ball. Kevin De Bruyne then turns, has all this free space to run after that, and then Holland, is in between that massive gap between Murielo, who can't really run at this point, and Oleana, who is worried about Kyle Walker on the wing as well. And so Holland's able to, he finds that gap. He turns and he's looking for the ball. And Kevin De Bruyne actually plays it. No one else would have done this. And it's a terrific run by Holland, and then Holland does very well to collect it, shifts the ball onto his right foot, and slots it in the corner. Again, only Kevin De Bruyne and Holland kind of create this to me. Yeah, it is a special duo that, uh, in a very weird situation where both star players really do one up each other, really do make each other so much better, and both light up when both are able to play together. And just the only issue is Kevin De Bruyne hasn't been healthy all year, and yeah, just that is what City have been in the past, and just we haven't seen it enough. Whether or not it's been a Kevin De Bruyne being a healthy issue, because last year it wasn't necessarily that. It was just Holland wasn't really that influential towards the end of the year. It wasn't really influential in the Champions League final. Then Kevin De Bruyne had to go off as well. So it's been a very strange year for City in that respect. You've tried Foden a little bit in that role instead, but you can see a creator needs someone to make runs ahead of him for him. When Kevin Bourne is not really going to beat a lot of people just with his pace alone. He needs someone else to do that running for him, and he benefits from that. I think Liverpool benefit from that when Darwin Núñez plays. He's not the same player as Holland, but at least as athletically, he kind of is. He just Núñez doesn't finish like that. But another thing too is Murillo was the last man to mark Holland, and he didn't have a hamstring at that point. So you're just kind of there was a moment probably where Nuno should have subbed him off, and he didn't do it for two of those goals. So uh, poor game management there, you can say. But another thing too is Forest did enough to win the game, just didn't take their chances. You don't really like simplifying it that much, but that really what is what it was. But another thing too is City were good in the second half. They dragged. They were draws in the first, but after the changes, it was Man City again. I mean, Forest did win on XG, 1.9 to 0.87. 14 shots, so they shot City, 14 to 11, but only two on target. So that kind of gets to where you're at. And so I mean, there you go. I mean, another thing that's kind of funny is it's very fitting the two teams chasing the title were not really great in the first half. Both teams don't really like playing with attacking, bombing fullbacks. They like Pep likes playing center backs basically in that area. I've talked about that ad nauseum a lot as well, and it hasn't always led to the most enjoyable experience, you can say. But at least if you're not going to be exciting, at least in the open play, you need to score in set pieces, dead plays, and both are really good at doing that. So I thought that was fitting. Uh, Another thing too is, yeah, you mentioned how you see what Holland offers, what Kevin De Bruyne offers. Nope, Foden in this game. Foden was quite good versus Brighton, and I do think what's funny is Pep kind of blamed the pitch for being dry. Maybe that was why they were bad in the first half, and I don't think the pitch being dry was why Rodri was getting outmanned in midfield. Uh, Rodri maybe in earlier in the season would have been able to do this by himself, but he wasn't. And Kyle Walker being bullied by Aina and Hudson-Odoi, I think that could be something to maybe look at if Kyle Walker is maybe ailing a little bit. I think Akanji is actually probably the best fullback, to be honest. We don't necessarily see that often, and I don't really like Akanji when he's played either in midfield, trying to in that role, or even as a center back. I think he's better on the at fullback. I think actually John Stones is your best, central defender. So that's something to say as well. No Diaz here, and then the only thing to really talk about is Jack Grealish offers you nothing on the wing to me. He's good at as a spacing. He forces you to, I guess, mark someone, but he's never really going to be someone to beat someone 1v1. And it just seems anytime he actually plays, it just gets brutal. He does well to at least attract attention, and then he'll pass it backwards, and then it's always just very slow. And to me, he just kills too many movements. Whether or not uh, he's out of ideas or Pep's telling him to play that way. When Doku plays, it's not the same. Maybe Pep wants Doku to play a certain way, but he doesn't. When Foden plays on the left, when Alvarez plays on the left, it's a little different. And sure, maybe you lose the ball, but it's just at least Pep doesn't care about pleasing neutrals. I get it. He just wants to win. But sometimes I don't think Grealish helps you win. We'll see what they do in the summertime. It's going to be very awkward because they are linked to Savio, I believe, of Citigroup owned in that club in Spain, Girona. Savio offers a little bit more than this. So that is this kind of the one kind of negative to talk about. And then again, City are the machine, but what are they going to do? You know, it- if they win out, they win it again, and that's kind of another thing that's annoying too. You have to basically win every single game from the turn of January to win a title. Um, yeah, they've gotten help financially, but they are a machine. You can't deny that. So, Liverpool have only lost I think 2 games, maybe like 3 games, all since the turn of January. Arsenal probably lost maybe one or two themselves, and you're still sweating it out because this team just does not lose. So Wolves up next for them. Wolves did beat them, at in the first half of the season. That was with Pedro Neto, though. But Wolves finally a little healthier. What I'm looking at is likewise with Arsenal and Bournemouth. There's that game. It's an early game in 2 weeks versus Fulham. I don't know if it'll be at Fulham or not. That could be interesting as well because it'll be the early game and it's the game probably before the Spurs. You don't think City are going to be a team that kind of looks ahead, but maybe that could be Rodrigo Munoz has been a threat in the air. He's been a great story for them. Maybe Anthony Robinson can make a run and to get a cross off. That could be Yao Paulinho. We'll see if he plays. That could maybe be uh, at least interesting. Paulinho versus Rodri. Maybe Paulinho doesn't even play because there's talks that Fulham doesn't want to play players that they are going to be selling. Tosin didn't play in their game this past weekend. So and then to that so that's Man City, and then to touch on with Forest, it is really unlucky for them, and it's not just lucky because of the not getting anything. They had a lot of injuries. Nico Williams, Murillo, and it looked like Bowley was struggling towards the end. And one thing to kind of praise about is with the back three, they were at least they were offensive minded. It's just when Holland came on, it was a different fish. And then I do think it was interesting. You were asked Gibbs White to kind of play a different role. It worked in the first half, did not really work in the second half. You probably could have tried Gia Reyna a little bit earlier. That's just kind of my kind of thinking on that. But it's not the way that the schedule and table is setting up. It's not the end of the world to lose to City. Losing players is not great, and getting Chris Wood to go from having all this confidence in the world to maybe people questioning him won't necessarily be great for the psyche. But you have that game in hand. The game in hand is Sheffield, who have nothing to play for. The appeals process might give you some good news, so there could be some reasons for Forest fans to still be upbeat about. And that's kind of where we are with them. And then Liverpool and West Ham, I'll probably just kind of end with them. I don't really want to do. every single game because I am kind of tired a little bit. It's not probably the last time I'll have to really focus on Liverpool, to be honest. So Liverpool do go on to tie 2-2. They had it in their hands. It was 2-1, but they conceded the first goal, and I think I mentioned it before, at least on here. Uh, when I looked back in February, this was always the awkward fixture. Um, again, away early window as well. But like the main thing is just after a short week, after the away game to Everton, this to me looked like the trap. Not necessarily Everton, though. Everton ended up getting it anyways. But so here you go. Right before halftime as well, Bowen on a corner kick. West Ham were offering nothing in the first half, and they get a corner kick and score on it. Robertson, early second half, 1-1. You get a goal from Robertson of all people, not what you would expect. Just because Robinson normally when he gets into the box, almost always hits it wide and blows the chance. Here, he gets a good finish on him. To be fair to him, and then Areola own goal after a little corner kick. Gakpo has a horrid finish, and actually he messes up so bad it confuses and surprises a couple of West Ham players. And then after that, there were 3 or 4 or 5 moments, just like every other game this year or this season since January, where the opportunities to get the third were there, and just again, poor decisions just didn't let it happen. And you allow a team to only be 1 goal out. They West Ham get a cross off. It's a very good cross by Bowen, but also the defending isn't necessarily great. Robinson is late to kind of react a little bit. And Kwanzaa is Van Dijk is marking no one, and the youngster Kwanzaa has to deal with someone as good as Antonio in the air, and Antonio makes him pay. Uh, and then all of the not just that, all of the drama happened after that, which I'll get to with Salah and Klopp. And then the other kind of news is Liverpool have made it official with who they're going to bring in to replace Klopp with. So I'll probably end with this, talk a little bit about what happened with Arsenal and Chelsea, and then just kind of really run down the other games. So sorry for at least if you care about the details of what happened in the other stuff. It's only a few were really that meaningful, but at least, anyways, I'll get to that later. So with Wolves, first need to start with what happened with Everton. So they flopped. No Gakpo again with his kid. So the front three was Diaz, Nunez, and Salah, and it's a good front three at least creating chances. It's not a good front three at scoring them. Salah is not the player that he's been since returning from injury. We need to remember that he is coming back from an injury. Unfortunately, that has been kind of left out of the discussion for some reason. I don't really understand why. And he returned early when probably he shouldn't have. He first came back from injury. He got a goal and assist for Brentford, and then re-injured himself. So I think Salah is a little bit concerned about that. I think he's but the finishing has been poor. He got a couple looks for Everton, and his finishing wasn't great. Nunez had a couple really good chances that again is not asking that much when you're so close to the goal to pick out the corner of the net, not just hitting it as hard as you can in the center where the keeper is. He did that versus Crystal Palace. He did it again versus Everton. Luis Diaz is so good at creating things. He's got such quick feet. He is back to where he was pre-injury, so that's good to see. But he's become the winger to what Nunez is as a striker. A lot of promise and a lot of empty promise. Uh, he cuts in and he does very well to he got a shot off, hit the post. So many 1v1 looks, and he's just not able to put him away. And he did that versus Everton as well. And then Curtis Jones, I thought was poor. He was someone to kind of highlight. Gravenberch was quite good for Fulham. Gravenberch wasn't able to to play. Curtis Jones back in. Jones does a lot of things that's good for you. He's not going to be someone to help you, win a game. And 3 midfielders versus a team that you didn't really need it for. And Everton get what they deserved. They were the better team. They couldn't defend on a corner kick as well. They couldn't clear a ball properly. Konate's probably worst game as a Liverpool player, in my opinion. And then Calvert-Lewin was fit for like 3 games this year, and of course he's fit for the Liverpool game. And he probably played one of his best games in 3 years. So, and then Allison, it could have been worse. And Allison had an early PK call that was against him, and it was taken back after a offsides call. And then with West Ham was so bad versus Crystal Palace. You assumed they Moyes was going to get them to rebound a little bit. You would get some kind of response as if he hadn't lost the dressing room. Another thing that helped is he had his full 11 back. He had Jared Bowen back, and of course, West Ham are a different team with Jared Bowen, and it was a stronger team as he could have lined up with. He went with Paqueta. He didn't go with James Ward-Prowse in midfield. He went with Paqueta in the middle, Bowen, Antonio, and Kudus. I mean, just that's as stacked as at least West Ham can be, unfortunately. And then with Liverpool, Trent, Kwanzaa, Van Dijk, Robertson, Indo, Alexis, and Gravenberch. So Alexis kind of pushed on the right side. Not my favorite because that forces him to kind of be a little more defensive minded. And then Elliot, Gakpo, and Diaz. So a different front three. Elliot offers you a lot of good things. He's not an attack-minded, right winger. He's very good at pressing. He's actually one of the better, pressing, attacker, I guess you can say, that they have. But really, he's a midfielder, and we've seen this tried a few times. We saw it in Europa games. Really, every time basically they didn't have Jota or Nunez or Salah, they struggled. And this front three really struggled in the first half as well. And then it got a little bit better in the second half, but they still they're not goals in that front three. Unfortunately, and I really like Elliot actually as as new kind of eight. He's really sold me as far as being a clever midfielder in that respect. But he's not going to offer you runs. He's not going to beat a man 1v1 on the wing. Uh, and it was awkward. He also had a really big chance early in the game where it crossed into the back post, where he doesn't have a right foot, and he's playing on the left side, so he tries to go with it right, and basically he hits it, side netting, where Stalin probably would have done the same thing because he doesn't really have a right foot either. But that just I would have liked to see Diaz on the right side. To be honest, I would have liked to see Elliot played in midfield instead. Uh, Maybe Alexis instead of Gravenberch. Even though Gravenberch, I thought actually had a pretty good game, but he also had some mess ups as well. Indo, I liked being played. To be honest, I don't really love Alexis being there. I like Alexis being a little further forward. But I would play Diaz on the right side. If you didn't have I probably would if Klopp wanted to like rest Salah. I guess I don't understand resting Salah and Nunez. So I would have liked to see Gakpo on the left and then Salah or Nunez. Salah through the middle would have been actually quite interesting, but Nunez as well. Um, that's what I would have run with. But I'm not I'm not the manager. But it's just it was frustrating because the first half was quite predictable, and Diaz was able to strike the post. I mentioned Elliott having the chance that missed. Trent Alexander-Arnold had a really nice ball to find Diaz, square ball to Gakpo, draws PK, but Diaz is just a little offsides. Could have done better in that situation. And then Bowen gets a free shot that forces an Allison save. So here it's Liverpool's own doing. So this leads to the goal. It's a hard goal kick taken short. Kwanzaa is kind of put into no man's land. He's trying to squeeze an impossible pass and basically gives the ball straight away. Alvarez then does well to keep the ball in the box, leads to a shot, which leads to a corner kick, and they score on the corner kick. It's taken quickly, and so Kudus kind of changes the angle of the delivery. Liverpool caught napping, and Bowen is able to beat Gakpo to a header, that's not really sitting well with me either, and Allison can't keep it out. So the halftime thoughts were Liverpool were dreadful, but didn't really feel like they deserved to be ahead, but not necessarily didn't deserve to be behind. It was just they had a few chances, didn't take them. West Ham had a half chance and took it. Uh, but the second half was better. So early chance for Gravenberch, decent strike, flies over the bar, but at least here. So Trent Alexander-Arnold has a cross to Diaz. Diaz brings it down, finds Gravenberch, gets it on goal. Or if he gets it on goal, this probably is going in. But it's a hard effort because the ball is bouncing before he hits it. Gets a good power on it. But they do get back into it a couple minutes with Robinson. And it is funny that him of all people is the one to get them back into the game. And so Diaz finds him. At this point, I'm expecting the ball to fly out of bounds. And Robertson just is able to beat Areola at the near post. And he does well here, to be fair. He collects the ball and then, takes with his next touch. He doesn't try to collect it. He just, first thought is to get a shot off. And the only thing to say here is Robertson and Diaz they had all this freedom in the second half. And just because West Ham were not doing well to really cover it. One thing that I was noticing was Gravenberch was doing very well to draw people out of position. So I think it was Sufal. Sufal, yeah, it would be Sufal. Sufal was Grafenberch would run to Sufal and then to run backwards to run towards the ball. West Ham were only playing with two in midfield. So Sioux Fall was kind of in a situation when Robinson was making forward runs. Uh, Now, if Liverpool lose the ball, it could be a problem, but they really weren't. Liverpool were quite good in possession. So what was happening was Gravenberch would run and basically drag Sioux Fall to mark him, and so that would always leave Diaz basically wide open. And this was happening over and over again. And so the fix was to have Zuma to run towards Diaz, but that's bringing Zuma all the way over. And so West Ham were vulnerable at the back end when you bring a center back over. And the only problem is so many times Diaz was getting the ball and there'd be no one with him. If Salah or Nunez are playing in that position, they're running with him. If Holland is playing, they're running with him. And Diaz would have had square balls open all day. And West Ham would have not been able to at least do what they were doing. Like Liverpool had the shape that was confusing West Ham all second half. And it was just frustrating as hell to see this happening over and over again and just Gakpo not recognizing you need to at a minimum make runs off the ball, make runs forward, not for you not to run towards the ball. No, we need you to be on the corner, be on the shoulder of a center back every single time because when Diaz was getting the ball, there would be no one. Elliott would be likewise. Elliott would be nowhere near him, and too often Diaz would get into good positions, and then we'd have to wait for everyone to catch up, and then maybe he'd be able to find someone in and do cutbacks. But it was frustrating how recognizable the problem was, and just there wasn't a way to change it. And because again, so here Diaz gets the ball free. Gakpo, again, yeah, Gakpo is doing well to draw Sufal out, and Gakpo. So here, so Diaz. Uh, Gakpo joins in. Diaz finally plays him the ball. Gakpo then keeps his head up. If Gakpo keeps his head up on this situation, he's got Alexander Arnold for an easy square ball. Instead, Gakpo tries to just kind of do a hero ball, and it's blocked. It's a good block by Obana, but that was a chance as well. And then Gravenberch made a clever run into the box. I think it's Gakpo that floats a ball into him. Gravenberch has a chance to collect this and do anything that he would have done would have been better than what he does. He tries to backheel this with one touch into the net and basically misses wide. He didn't have to go for the spectacular. There would have been time to collect it because there wasn't really anyone near him. So that was a missed opportunity as well. And then so here, 54th minute, Gakpo on the left floats a ball that Gravenberch is all alone. Oh, sorry, I had that. And then we get to the 55th. Liverpool get the goal with Auriolo, so they score on the corner kick, but they make a mess of things as well. So I don't really like the way they scored because Gakpo has the shot, he mishits the shot, and they score off the miss hit. So at least a goal going in is a goal going in, but it's not great for confidence either. And then a couple of chances here. So we have Alexander Arnold through the middle, floats a ball to find McAllister, and McAllister can't get the head right. But again, McAllister has to make the run, and it's not really like it's a clever run that it was designed to have. Oh, we'll have everyone just being running to the ball, and then we'll have McAllister make the run. No one will see it. No, it's big. No one else is thinking of doing that run. Only McAllister is. So if it's Nunez or Salah instead, I think they may score this. I mean, it's a great ball to him. McAllister does get ahead to it, but he doesn't put it away. But again, it was frustrating. Gakpo played in this position through the middle of the field is too often is doing this. He's never really where you want him to be in the box. He's always behind the play. People like doing that with false nines. But when you do that, you have to get your goals from your wide players. Elliott's not going to get you goals, at least at a high clip. We haven't seen it, and then Luis Diaz isn't either. So Arsenal play this way with Havertz, but it's different because Saka and Martinelli and Trossard get you goals from the wide areas when they cut inside, basically become your strikers. Uh, you're not getting that when your Gakpo plays and the same way. When Firmino played, you had Salah and Mane. So it's frustrating. It's frustrating that they've turned in a very good winger, at least a different league. But at PSV, Gakpo was very good at playing on the left, cutting inside, and either making people miss because he's a big body, but he's also got very long legs, a good touch to him. Can make people miss, but he's got a great shot on him. and it's just very frustrating. He did not play it on the left nearly enough. If the new coach comes in, I'm hoping that he has that in his cards and not to try to play Gakpo through the middle like this. So because it is frustrating. Like Nunez gets into good positions and he can't convert the chances, but he's getting into good positions. Gakpo's not. So yeah. So and then Diaz has a chance, goes for the curler. It was annoying too because so many of these times when he's cutting in, I feel like the if he does what Mbappe always does, tries to fool by faking a goalkeeper thinks he's going to go far post and then try to beating him near post. Diaz doesn't do that enough for me. It's harder to try to beat a keeper, trying to curl it, especially if going for height, than trying to hit something hard and low to the near post. And just Dia was getting into good positions. He was cooking people all game, and just when the final product came, it just was falling off a little short. West Ham looked on the ropes, and then they slip on another banana peel. So Kudos is the first one that does really well to keep the ball under pressure. Eventually, a cross comes in. It looks easy though. There's no reason for Liverpool to screw this up. Allison makes a royal mess of it, coming out and drops a catchable ball. Liverpool then lose their heads. Robinson just makes a dumb decision to head the ball away. Allison's still there, to collect it if he doesn't. And then West Ham get a shot off, forcing an Allison save. And then Robinson runs the loose ball, boots it away. And so what happens is West Ham get another chance to attack, and they score on it. So here, again, it is shambolic. So three players are dressed around Paqueta, and he's still able to find Bowen on the wing. Bowen and Kudu, Sufal kind of next to each other. Robinson is marking no one. He's late to close down. Uh, Robinson scored, but other than that, he was actually quite poor in my opinion. So, and he's not the only one. A lot of guys have returned from injury that have just been not being able to pick up to where they've been. So here, Bowen's able to cut inside. Robinson's late to react, and then gets a free cross off. It's a fantastic cross. And then Antonio just makes a run kind of in between Van Dijk and Kwanzaa, and just he's able to bully Kwanzaa a little bit. Van Dijk's marking no one at this point, so that's kind of annoying as well. And Antonio, bullies him. Antonio's a good player. So his issue is not being his fitness as well. He's not always available. When he is, this is a different West Ham team when Antonio plays and Bowen plays. That's just been the case all year. I mentioned how they were overachieving. I can mention how last week kind of went after a little bit of Moyes. One thing I'll uh, I guess edit myself or add on is the main thing is just not having depth. When you don't have like for like when those players are missing. Bacata, when he was missing earlier in the season, you didn't have like for like there either. James Ward-Prowse has been good for you when it comes to like set piece delivery, but an outfield kind of player, it's not like for like. And just in a big game that Moyes wanted to make a statement the statement was made, and it was James Ward-Prowse isn't good enough for the team. So it was frustrating that Moyes got it right, and they were able to there you go. They deserved it. I thought West Ham were on the ropes, but they were able to stay in it. They defended well. Gabana actually had a couple really big blocks when I thought Gabana was quite poor versus Crystal Palace last week. And the only thing to talk about after that was after the second goal went in, then the controversy, then the talking points, the drama happened. So Salah and Nunez come on, and Klopp did this late, in my opinion. I think Salah was made a mark. He was like, "You should have done it earlier." He's right. There were so many times when West Ham were just dying to be hit on the counter. Luis Diaz was getting the ball and just he would have no one to square anything to. And yeah, I don't know. Klopp got it wrong. Salah has returned. Hasn't really been his best, but this wasn't really the statement to make. Uh, where I'm going to punish you now for your poor play. So it was wrong, and Salah and Klopp got into it a little bit. I don't really think there's as much there as people have talked about it, but I do think one thing that's awkward is Klopp making his statement in the beginning of the year has kind of disrupted things. I think it's been a distraction. The other distraction has been for about a year now. The Saudi league has been flirting with Salah and his agent hasn't really helped out here. Has been flirting with this will be the final season that Salah's because he's not going to extend his contract either. And so we're getting to the point where now there's not really anything to play for. You need to plan about the future. And I don't necessarily think Klopp was thinking that way, but it's just been I think there's been a little animosity towards Salah in that respect, and I think that's the reason why people have been looking for a reason to turn on him. I think this gave him what they were looking for, unfortunately. So I mean, I don't necessarily think it's as big as what people have blown it out to be. I think actually, it's funny how after this it came out that Salah is looking to not do the Saudi League and wants to actually stay with Liverpool. So uh, either way, it's a little of a distraction, but that's not really why this happened. I think Klopp just screwed up with his decision making, but that's still there was still something weird that happened in the game, and it's been overshadowed with the Klopp and Salah drama. So here, Areola jumps to win a ball off a corner kick, and he like falls into the post kind of awkwardly, but it's not really a foul. And the ref is basically you see Anthony Taylor telling him it's not a foul. Get up, play on. And Areola just rolls the ball on the ground in open play. It's not a foul. It's not. This isn't a play stoppage. It's an open play game. Gakpo runs onto it, and then Anthony Taylor blows the play dead. And I just maybe he didn't think it was fair that Areola made a mistake. But if Gakpo scores here, what happens? Gakpo should have ignored Taylor and scored. Uh, I mentioned how last week with my Forest grant, a lot of refs just aren't good enough. If Gakpo scores this, Anthony Taylor has a right mess on his hands. And it's not the first time that where Liverpool have kind of been hard done by a little bit by just weird refing decisions that just shouldn't have happened. So, another thing too is, Ben White is doing this kind of offsides kind of screening on the goalkeeper. Van Dijk was called for an offsides call in the uh, Carabao final. I haven't seen that called all year, to be honest. It's the Luis Diaz goal with Spurs. The Alexis McAllister getting absolute cleated into his chest versus Man City at the end of the game. That's not called, but all these other ones have been. So uh, it, it is sour grapes in some respects, but it's I think there's reasons to have sour grapes as well. But that didn't necessarily sit well with me, especially after you. Because it happens in real time, you're like, "Did that really happen?" Then you kinda forget about it, and then you rewatch it, and you're like, "Wow, that shouldn't have happened." Like, there's no reason for Taylor to blow the whistle dead. Gakpo still has to score it, but I just, I that is kind of a little annoying that he didn't just kind of ignore it and actually put the ball in the net. Make Anthony Taylor have to own that. Maybe Anthony Taylor wouldn't be able to ref after that. It'd be such a scandal, and that's what people would have been talking about, not the Salah stuff, had that happened. So that was unfortunate. And then Liverpool do have a breakaway towards the very end. Salah leads it. Looks quite pacey, to be honest. But he has a bad touch, bad decision. Has a poor pass to Nunez. He has Nunez has all this pace to run with. Salah with his right foot just plays a ball that's so far behind him. Nunez just loses all momentum. Has to play it back to Elliott, and then Elliott does well to have a hopeful lash and strikes it well. And just Areola is beaten, but the crossbar saves him. So uh, just uh, just not good enough. Unfortunately, it is what it is. First half was dreadful. Second half they turned up, and then from the 55th minute to the 70th, it was there to be won. And just the missed chances that have been showing up since like February happened again. And other than like personnel, I don't really know how to really change it. And so that's why I am surprised we haven't seen more Dans, we haven't seen Bobby Clark, etc. It's also been very weird how, as people have returned from injury, Klopp's put him back into the 11, and they've been worse. So, Liverpool had that injury crisis, and it only factored in when people got healthier, when they started to lose some games. So, just it was unfortunate, and again the early fixture list as well. Liverpool have not enjoyed these early Saturday games. Maybe that's the reason why I'm saying it for Man City and Arsenal as well. Is I personally, as a Liverpool fan, have seen these early games just bite them. It is frustrating. Maybe Pep and Arteta are better at getting more prepared for those early games. I mean, 28 shots, 8 on target, 17 shots in the second half, 6 on target. So that kind of says how they were in the first half versus the second. West Ham with 11 shots and 8 on target, to be fair to them, but only, point 0.7 xG, and then Liverpool point 1, 0.75. Both keepers had to work, though, 7 saves for 6, so West Ham didn't have a lot of the ball, 29% of it, 183 passes, but they got as many looks on goal as Liverpool. So that kind of says it too. That's just that's where the game is. That is Moyes ball, in my opinion. If someone would ask me how to describe it, it would be that. It would be out being possessed by 70% and still having the same amount of goals, having the same amount of looks on goal, having the same amount of forces the keeper to make saves. So that is a little bit confusing, especially when you concede first to a Moyes side. It's the same thing as Sean Dyche. When you concede first to Everton, you're in it now. So yeah, I mean, again, reffing errors have played a role, but you can't really look at that. One thing I do want to kind of focus on a little bit was, I already mentioned how Klopp leaving out Jaden Dan's kind of annoying. Trent having his inverted stuff since he's returned back into the squad has been awkward too. Because when Salah plays, we saw this for Everton that was really annoying. Is he's being forced to run and offer the width, and Salah sometimes is actually the fullback because he's the only one offering width. It's not where you want him to be, especially if he's someone that's kind of struggling for pace, struggling to beat people 1v1. I would prefer Salah to almost be like a poacher, get him more touches into the box. Force. So the only way to do that is you make Trent Alexander just a fullback. You make him be the person to go down the touchline and offer some crosses. Maybe in moments you can have him to kind of invert into midfield, or just play him in midfield specifically and have Gomez be your fullback, which is what I was talking about back in October when I was kind of worried a little bit about this, but it showed up again. When Salah played versus Everton and wasn't good. And then Salah was getting I kept thinking the amount of looks that Nunez was getting and was just missing. If Salah in that situation, or Holland, or Ishak, as we've seen, or even like a Solanke, I just kept seeing all these times that Nunez was getting 5 feet away from goal. All you'd have to do is just pick a side, essentially. Hit it. Don't hit it over the bar, but just get some contact and pick a side. And he just tries to hit it as hard. It was almost like he's closing his eyes when he hits the ball. I was just thinking I would prefer someone else to be in that role, but I don't want to sacrifice Salah. I don't want him, and that's what Klopp's kind of done. Is he's moved him to be a little bit more of a playmaker and creator. And a lot of these times, Salah is creating for Nunez to have these good looks, and Nunez is blowing him away. I want Salah to be closer into the box. I don't know really how you do it. Other than that, when Szoboszlai before Szoboszlai got hurt, he was kind of being the one that was offering some pretty good width. So he would be almost like the wing back or fullback. Trent Alexander played in that inverted role, and then Salah would just kind of be forced to kind of play inside too, because of Szoboszlai being the one to run outside. It just the connection hasn't really been there since everyone's been kind of hurt and returned. Another thing too is Robinson on corner kicks, maddening as hell. It keeps making me frustrated. Uh, and uh, and Jota, it's not a significance that they beat Fulham. Why do they do that? Because Jota is back. Jota had to got hurt again. Had to miss Everton. Had to miss here, and they could have used him. I think they beat Everton if Jota plays. I think they would have beat Palace if Jota had returned where wasn't just coming back from injury. Had he just not been hurt. There are a lot of games I think Jota would have helped Liverpool actually win the title had he been fit. And so that is the frustrating thing about him, really. So one thing I want to at least focus on a little bit is where did this go wrong? And I do want to focus on the Klopp announcement. So for over a month, I have started to wonder if the announcement of him leaving has gone from a jolt rallying cry to almost like a distraction, a crutch, a little bit. Especially when maybe one thing just doesn't necessarily go your way. It all kind of coincides a little bit with what happened in the FA Cup game versus Man United, where they played so good that game, but they lose 4-3, and it's because it was open, and it was also because they couldn't they couldn't win the game like 5-1 when it was open, and 2-1. You kept getting chance after chance and just got gun shy in front of goal in that game, and that's all the confidence just went out the window after that. But it does feel like players are starting to think, hey, one, we're not going to have our manager. They didn't know who it would be before. Then another thing too was maybe the idea it was going to be Xavi Alonso, and when the news came out that Alonso was staying, that almost kind of coincided a little bit with I think with the Man United game. So it- there's a lot of times when the unknown can be distracting. It's nice to know what the future is. There's security in that, and people perform, people play better, people work better when you don't have the stress of the unknown. Some people thrive in that, some people don't. Another thing too is Edwards has been brought back, and the announcement has happened with that. And another thing I'm starting to wonder about, and this is maybe just me kind of being a little, I want to say conspiracy theory, but maybe being a little paranoid myself, is what is Michael Edwards really known for? And it's one being quite good at looking at the data and being able to figure out who can be a gem, who can be brought in for a good value. But the other thing really is being able to look at the data, see who is overperforming or underperforming, who should be shipped out of the squad or not. And I don't know if him being brought back, uh, it's almost like let's think of it this way. If you have a job performance review coming up, and your company has brought in the main data looking the main the main almost like layoff guy, like the specialist, basically, to come in, the main layoff specialist that only looks at data and really nothing else. Are you performing to his standards, not just yours, or not? Again, some people thrive in that, or some people don't. Are you like more likely or less likely to perform your best? Are you more likely or less likely to maybe have some stress leading up to that, or not? And it's different than competition. Competition is something you can control. Competition, competition for minutes, competition in the squad is good because maybe you lose out to someone taking your place, but you always have a chance to change that. You know it's not going to be necessarily the end result with whether or not you get kicked out of the squad or not due to performance that's kind of out of your control. That's not necessarily the same thing, and I do think Edwards being brought back is maybe created some doubt. I don't know if that's true or not. That could be entirely speculation on my part. Again, it could be just paranoia on my part, but that is something I've wondered about. But at the end of the day, they've created enough to do better. And no Jota, no fun, no goals. It's been the case really for a couple of years now. I want to say the best striker, and even going back to 22, the best striker for Klopp since the turn of January in every single season has been Jota, not Salah. Um, maybe it was Mane actually when Mane was kind of played a little bit in the middle. But really, Jota has been the best striker, the most dependable striker after the turn of January. Salah has been amazing in every single season, but he gets overplayed. He has his African Cup of Nations, and he gets tired or he gets hurt, and he returns, and he hasn't really been the same player in really any of these title run-ins that I can remember. Where even one when he had the break, even one after the COVID bubble, where they returned, and he was going for the Golden Boot, and I don't think he scored in open play in those final like 5 or 6 games after the league returned, and it's just you can't really remember him just kind of being performing at the same kind of level. And when you have Nunez that's not really being able to finish for you either. Nunez has to have a lot of chances to he doesn't just take one to take it. He has to take like five to get one. Diaz is a big frustration as well. Jota's the one player that does finish those chances, and so uh, that's kind of just where we're at. And then another thing too is they've conceded some cheap goals recently as well. Just seems Allison has come back. I don't want to blame that because Kelleher was poor at first at Atlanta. Uh, but they just I don't know if maybe they just think like the way Kanate played versus Everton. That's the worst I've seen him play. I think maybe ever. To be honest, and then Kwanzaa just got beat by someone that's a better striker, and Kwanzaa's 19 years old. He'll get better. But that was it was frustrating. But another thing too is the squad makeup of the team was set up to be a crutch down the stretch. They started the season with one of the smallest squads in England, and the only reason, again, this didn't crater sooner was because the kids did a very admirable job in January, February, and March. So the injury crisis should have put them back in the Spurs Villa spot a long time ago. And again, it is frustrating. We haven't seen more Bobby Clark and someone like a Jaden Dans in the last few games to at least give the squad give a different look. These players aren't gonna be gun shy. They haven't experienced that, so you have to change personnel sometimes. So it has been annoying that we haven't seen that. But another thing too is Klopp's final year. You knew about it. Why not gift him a little something in January? Why not gift him a striker? I think it's good that Ryan Gravenberch has somewhat come good the last couple of games, but at the same time, you could have had Mo Kudus instead. Uh, and with Mo Kudus would have helped you through the injury crisis. You were always short an attacking kind of player. Um, and another thing too is you cheaped that out with Endo. They missed out on Casado. Casado would have changed things as well. Casado and Alexis, you know how good they were with Brighton. It would have been the same thing. And so it has been frustrating. And then the other thing too is uh, the context of again with the goal really was Champions League, and the only reason why everything changed was because of Klopp announcing. So, but the real frustrating part is the title is not going to be won with more than 90 points. So it was a massive opportunity in the Pep City era where someone's not going to have 90 points. So if Arsenal do go on to get it, good job for at least. You don't want to say that they got it because City kind of down tooled themselves, but I'm used to City basically having 96 plus, 95 plus to even compete. So yeah, I do think you can make that case. And then with Arnie Slot being official. So I mean, what happens in the summer? Does Salah come back? What happens with Diaz? Do they sign another DM? Endo is 31. But hasn't played a minute this season. I would like to actually see that. If Bajcetic is available, there's really nothing to play for coming up. They do have a big game for Spurs. Maybe that wouldn't be the game. But maybe the final game of the season, you have Wolves. Not really anything to play for. Let's see Bajcetic play. Let's see Bobby Clark play. Um, and then I think to another of Liverpool's youngsters that we saw go out on loan. Curtis Jones comes to mind. I think he needs to have. I think he needs to go on loan. I like him, but he's never looked the. It's very weird because Harvey Elliott when he has the ball is different than Curtis Jones. I just think Harvey Elliott was able to get that loan at Blackpool or Blackburn. He was able to get that season in the championship, and he was able to just play every single game, learn how to be a professional, learn how to play every single kind of game situation. Where Curtis Jones hasn't. Curtis Jones gets minutes here and there as a starter, but he's slow on the ball. You see what he can do. He's incredible out of possession. One of the best when it comes to like work rates. I mean, he basically became Klopp's Henderson or Klopp's, Genie Wijnaldum. But is that good enough? Um, I would like him to develop a little more of a sense of how to actually play midfield, how to keep your eye up for a pass. Uh, that he just hasn't seen. Another thing too is you have Tyler Morton and Fabio Carvalho that are doing well with Hull City, kind of doing that are getting a chance to actually play week in and week out, and it's helped them. So do you bring them back in, or do you actually decide to sell them? So that's what Arne Slot is going to have to think about. I do like the idea that they brought in someone that's not necessarily a back three kind of coach, so there shouldn't be that much change in that respect. But 4-2-3-1. I don't really like Nunez being the lead striker, and then with the you have to have someone that plays in that 10 role that understands they can't just be Bruno Fernandez. They have to actually do some defensive work as well. So that can be tricky. The other thing too is your wingers are going to have to be good 1v1s and also be able to offer some goals. Liverpool don't really have that at the moment. So there's a lot of talk a little bit about that. And then with West Ham, again, different team when Bowen plays. So of course, but tight games come down to moments. Bowen and Antonio chance is a half chance, really, and they took it. So fair play to them. And then that's kind of just where we're at. Let's see. Yeah, 2 hours. So with Aston Villa, they go on to win or draw 2-2. They had a 2 goal lead. It was they actually scored really early with I think it was an own goal or John McGinn kind of had a shot that basically deflected off Mark Cucurella. Mark Cucurella kind of screwed up a little bit. Chelsea thought the ball was out of bounds. They stopped playing a little bit into that. And then they get the second goal right before halftime with Morgan Rogers. Morgan Rogers continues to play well for them, so that's a good story. But they lost Yuri Tielemans, and I thought that was significant. And then they lost really they lost Emil Martinez, and that really was the main one because they just weren't able to keep the ball at all. Chelsea's really good at just pressing and winning the ball back, and they were getting a lot of looks. Just nothing was going in, and then they were able to get another turnover that Madueke is able to put one in behind, and then they get the second one with a worldie by Conor Gallagher, and then it was almost 3-2 with Diazy late on a corner kick, and they get the corner kick because it's another Villa just really terrible. Decision at the back. I think it's Konza. He just kind of freaks out because Robert Olsen is running at him, and Konza doesn't know. He doesn't want to, pass it backwards because he doesn't think maybe Olsen's going to be able to get there. So Konza tries to, change of course and tries to just, boot the ball, backwards or boot the ball with his back to goal, kind of boot it forwards. And all he does is he basically plays it to Cole Palmer. And then after a little shimmy or after a little move, he's able to dribble into the box. He's got a 1v1. He has a chance to actually win it, and then he forces a pretty good save out of Robert Olsen. But he gets the corner kick, and they nearly score on the corner kick. So that's where we were with Villa and Chelsea. It's Chelsea do well to respond well. Jackson had a couple of moments to actually score. He took his chance well. That was offside, but he also you see he's just it's similar to with like Liverpool's respect, where Jackson to me is like what Darwin Núñez is. Does well to make runs, but he is so frustrating that um, how patient can you be? Do Chelsea try to bring someone else in or not? But the other thing too is everyone's going to look at their attacking core. Uh, Defensively, are they good enough as well? I don't really think they are. You're still playing Thiago Silva since he's returned from injury every single game week. Diazy and Bashile don't really offer that much confidence. Chalaba played in this game, so you didn't have Marlo Gusto again. Next year you'll have Reece James, so that probably won't be an issue. You will have Wesley Fofana back, you imagine. But where do Chelsea? Levi Colwell will be another when he finally returns from injury. Uh, but is that enough? Do you want to maybe sell a Diazy, Bishop Adishile, maybe bring someone else in? I don't really know how much Chelsea's going to be able to play with. I think they actually have to do a lot of sales anyways without necessarily bringing someone in. What do you do with striker? Next year you'll having Cuckoo. You imagine back. There's still a lot of work to do. So Pochettino was able to get them to respond well after getting destroyed by Arsenal, but not necessarily that much. But the the thing with Aston Villa is it could have been worse. The point wasn't insignificant though. They really couldn't get Watkins the ball, unfortunately. So there were a lot of decoy runs, but I mentioned how one thing it's good to have someone that does a lot of unselfish running. Doesn't really help though if you're not looking for it, if you're not actually able to to play him in. That's what Holland's had to deal with. So that's where Tielemans kind of missed, hurt a little bit. Um, so that's where we are with that game, and then Man United and Burnley. They played to a 1-1. Burnley, I thought actually probably could have won this. They had 18 shots. It easily could have been 35. The number of times that Man United were just giving the ball away, Burnley looked to have a breakaway, and were actually just making mistakes over and over again. Um, but Man United also had a number of looks as well, and Man United get their goal because Burnley do what they've done as well. The last few weeks, Burnley have been their own downfall a little bit. Murridge had the mistake versus Everton, had the mistake versus Brighton, and here it's Sanderberger. Sanderberger has the mistake, just playing it to Anthony. He's able to read it, and then Anthony does really well to finish. And then Amdouni is able to get it all square with a PK kind of late, where Burnley did well to at least get a good cross into the box. Casemiro can't really deal with it. kinda mess, or I think it's Wan-Bissaka. Wan-Bissaka can't really deal with it. Casemiro then tries to head it to Onana. Onana can't get to it, and Onana just sells out to try to get to it, and just completely, bulldozes, kind of, slaps into, someone's head. And, the interesting thing is, the consistency is also annoying as well if you're a Man United fan, because Onana was able to get away with this first Wolves first game of the season, wasn't able to get it away here. Fouls Mdouni, and then Mdouni is able to, get the PK. Again, it is probably what Burnley deserved, but Man United had moments, as well. The only thing to say is, Ten Hag made some interesting calls again, and, it's not really what you, if you're a Man United fan, this continues to be a bit of an issue where if I was a supporter of them, I would be a little worried. Uh, you've had injury issues, all year, so that's not necessarily on him, but he's making personnel issues that are strange to me. So he takes off Kobe Mano again. Anytime he's done that, I think they come off looking worse. So he brought on McTominay. So it's McTominay and Ericsson. There's not really any protection in that midfield, and just Burnley were just had so much fun being able to just run past Ericsson. McTominay wasn't in position. Bruno wasn't in position. It would just be open season, just like we've seen every single game week. And and you've got Harry Maguire and Casemiro that are in retreat mode all the time. Burnley easily could have had more looks than they did. Onana made a mistake for the PK, but Onana actually kept them in it, with a couple really nice saves, at least in the first half. And just Burnley didn't make enough count, that they should have. But yeah, the Kobe Mano coming off, but he also, it was a 0-0 game, and he took off Hoyland. He took off your striker. No Rashford in this game, so you can't blame Rashford for why Hoyland wasn't, impactful. But Hoyland also wasn't able to play the 90 minutes, and I don't think it was for an injury. I think that was strange. Now they get the goal because Anthony came on and basically ended up playing almost like your striker, because you weren't really playing with a striker at that point. They brought on Amad Diallo, and you had Garnacho. Garnacho probably had his best game. Garnacho maybe it has replaced Rashford, at least on that left wing. I don't really know what to do with Rashford, to be honest, because I think Garnacho is a better player on that left wing now. Uh, I don't really know if Rashford can be tried on the right, or they need to find a way to play someone on the right. But I've said that for like 5 or 6 years now. Well, not that much. Probably like 4 years, in a row, where they had Anthony Alenga and just decided, no, you're not good enough for us, and that's been a mistake. Maybe it can be Diallo. Diallo's gotten started to get some minutes for them, but yeah, I mean that's just kind of where United are at. Before in the midweek, they had Sheffield, and they were losing to Sheffield. But Bruno and actually I think Hoyland ended up scoring in that game at least. So Man United are just where they're at. There's not really, you don't need to spend that much time on them every single game week. I mean, 7 big chances for them. 27 shots and 10 on target, but Burnley 16 and 7. To be fair, 2 big chances for Burnley. Burnley outpossessed them at Old Trafford. That's worth something. That's worth saying something as well. So it's it's a team that definitely needs to be scalped over, to say the least. Injuries or not, the team to me isn't necessarily good enough, and we'll see what they do. We'll see what they do with personnel. We'll see what they do with the coaching staff. They've already replaced the ownership. So if nothing else, you need to find a way to find a partner to Kobe Mano. It's not going to be Casemiro, you don't imagine. I don't think it's Ericsson. I don't really think it's McTominay. So who can you find that's out there that can you can supplement a little bit with Mano, where it's not just him being having to play midfield all by himself. Rashford, Rasmus Hoyland has shown he can put some chances away. He can be a good striker for you if you give him looks. And they're not able to create enough for him, in my opinion. Garnacho looked better on the left wing, but still not really able to create enough. To be honest, and again, Onana makes a mistake for the pen, but he was the only reason why Burnley weren't really ahead. He made a couple really nice saves. So uh, they do have the FA final to still look at. Maybe they're able to surprise. They do seem to turn up for the big games. They still have Arsenal to play as well. So we'll see. I think one of the other storylines was it looked like McTominay got hurt. I think in this game, kind of after he came on late. So that's just where they are. It's a story about Burnley. Burnley's been able to company being able to keep Burnley alive has not been what I've been expecting, and it's only happened because they've gone 7 games unbeaten, or some 7 games not losing. Yeah, unbeaten, not necessarily in a winning streak. A lot of these were it could have even been better. To be honest, I mean the point keeps them alive. It would have been better to have 3. Uh, I do think, you know, company went with both Fofana and Lyle Foster, 2 strikers. I think the 2 strikers recognized Casemiro and Maguire are never really going to follow you. And so they were often, finding the ball in lots of space to get the ball turned, and they'd be, Casemiro and Maguire would be running into treatment, just marking grass, just running running to make sure that no one's getting behind them. And all you were doing is just creating more space for you to have lots of freedom to run in, and you were still getting lots of looks. So it's not really the best way to play. But just like with Liverpool, it requires, regardless of whether a team gets lots of looks or not, you still have to put them away. Because the game is open for the other team as well when you're attacking like that. And Burnley weren't necessarily able to do that, so that is unfortunate. They do have that Nottingham Forest, final game of the season. So we'll see. We'll see if company is able to do the kind of the impossible. I don't know. He wouldn't get nods for manager of the year, but if he keeps them up, he is worth a shout. I do think Unai Emery is manager of the year. Arsenal fans will scream Arteta, um, but what Emery's done has been quite remarkable as well. Because anytime you've uh, uh, discount them, they keep fighting back. Especially if he's able to keep them in a Champions League spot. But we'll see. Aston Villa still have that game. Uh, versus Liverpool. Spurs still have to play Liverpool as well, so that could be maybe to decide what gets top four. To be honest, and then Spurs still have to play Man City, so that could help Aston Villa as well. And then with Wolves and Luton, Wolves do go on to win 2-1. First with Wang. Wang is quite a funny little striker, almost underrated in a respect. He doesn't score a lot, but he's got some of the best quick feet and balance, I think, of any striking player in the league. The goal he scores here, just the clever quick feet to, he fakes the cross with his left foot, gets it onto his right, and then he's able to slot it in. He scored a goal, an amazing goal, back in October, I think, versus Newcastle, doing something similar where he has such good balance, and he's quicker than you realize. And just the only thing with Wolves is you haven't had him for a lot of the season. Neither with Cunha. Cunha had to helped out a little bit for that first goal, and then Tati Gomez after. Looked like he actually had Wang made a good run. He had a little square ball into the box, and that was defended, and then corner kick. But Tati Gomez is able to score on the corner kick, and then Carlton Morris was able to get one back 2-1, but it was a little too late. So big chance for Luton, and it wasn't really taken. Wolves finally a little healthier, able to extend a. I think they said they had lost like 7 in a row. They lost in the midweek to Bournemouth as well, and Wolves look better when they have better players, essentially. So I mean, Luton were trying to press, and Wolves was 535 passes, 87% accuracy. That's impressive. It's O'Neill has done a good job. There's been a lot of talk lately because of what Bournemouth's done that Bournemouth were good to drop O'Neill. O'Neill's worthy of still getting some praise, in my opinion, as well. So good to bounce back. Back to back losses with Bournemouth and then Arsenal. Weren't able to play Mateus Cunha. Didn't have Wang for any of those games. You see what happens when they actually have attacking players, and they're still missing Neto, so they're still not necessarily fully healthy. But as far as Luton, it was a opportunity dropped, but at the same time, probably the more important thing is getting healthier. So you have Ross Barkley, you have Sambi Lokonga back, you have Adebayo now to play with Carlton Morris. So we'll see if for the last down the stretch they still have Everton to play. Everton are now safe, so they don't really have much to play for in that game, and they still have I think it's like Fulham or like a Bournemouth. They still have a couple of games where they can maybe benefit from there. And Luton are not necessarily out of it either. It's just they're not really in the driving seat. And then Brighton and Bournemouth don't have to spend a ton of time because it wasn't that meaningful. Bournemouth do go on to win 3-0 after a Dino's Unai, I think gets the first goal, and then it's I think, or it's Senesi. Senesi gets one, and then Unai gets the second, and then it's Clavert. Clavert gets the third, and Clavert's able to kind of just, have fun with Brighton's Valentin Barco. Unfortunately, Billy Gilmore is back for Brighton, and I don't really think it was the best call by De Zerbi by sitting Carlos Baliba because I thought they were kind of a little weak in the middle of the field. Brighton also went with this guy Mahoney. This 19-year-old for striker didn't really work out because we saw Danny Welbeck starting in the second half. But you look at that's not a strong Brighton team, but by any means, Ofana and Dunk Igor and then Barco for the back line. That's not at all what De Zerbi would have wanted, and just yeah, unfortunately for him, it's just not been a good. It's not been a good week for De Zerbi. And one thing to touch on with Brighton before I get to Bournemouth is it's gotten to a point where Deserby's name keeps getting floated around for new manager jobs, and does that upset players? Players don't really know what their future is for next season either. But and also, it's just an impossible spot with all these injuries. He's playing kids and playing them out of possession in many respects. So I don't really think there's that much to complain about. I do think Incisu came on in the second half, looked quite good for them. At least looked quicker. So that's at least maybe some positive. Uh, but eh, that's kind of just where we are, at least with that. And then with Bournemouth, um, yeah, again, outside of the top four or top five, whatever it is, no one has won more points. So it has been an amazing job what Ariola has done, and I liked what he did. He went with aggressive lineup with Brighton. He played with four attackers and only two in midfield. He played Denez, Uniel, and Solanke together for the first time. Pressed Brighton and got Brighton into some turnovers that Bournemouth were able to capitalize on. So good little game plan by Bournemouth. They only had 30% of the ball, but outshot Brighton, 15 shots and six on target. Brighton had 13 shots, only one on target, so that was kind of an issue as well. Brighton need to figure out what to do with striker. It probably not going to be Welbeck. If Ferguson is going to have knee issues, that because you imagine Ferguson was going to be someone that was going to have big suitors coming looking at him. Yeah, Mbappe has talked him up in some respects. He is only 19. You have to remember that. But if he's not ready, you need to maybe think about that. You need to bring in someone instead. One thing I was looking at is I don't necessarily know how much it would have helped, but they had someone like Denis Undev last season for them, and all he's done is had like a 19 goal season, I think, for Union Berlin. So Brighton need to maybe think about bringing someone else in as far as ready made. Valentin, all these like small, clever, South American kind of signings that they keep doing. Uh, it's good for the future, but it's not necessarily great now. You lose you lose Casado, you bring in Carlos Baleba. Baleba's had a good season for the last couple of weeks, but he hasn't been ready made since you brought him in. Um, yeah, and injuries at the back as well. Losing Matoma since like February, it's been disruptive, 100%. And the one positive is Sully Marsh, I think, was back at least as far as being on the bench. Yeah, Siso at least is back. You haven't had him for like the whole season for an ACL, so uh, reasons to maybe be optimistic at least towards the end of the season, maybe for Brighton fans. But if nothing else, it's not really been that failure of a season, and especially if you keep De Zerbi, who knows what the future can be. De Zerbi, Brighton needs to like think about finding a way to have some better backing though. Are they going to just be a selling club that's like really clever, or are they going to try to go for it, try to win some titles, or try to I'm gonna say win some titles, but try to push for something further. We'll have to see. And then Everton and Brentford. This should have been blockbuster, and it basically wasn't. Everton do on win 1-0 with a goal by Idrissa Gueye. What I think what's funny with Brentford is Ivan Toney had missed a few games, and he came back, and it didn't really change things. It almost made them worse. He had that one chance in the second half where Pickford had to make a really nice save. But I thought what Brentford had established the last couple of games had been disrupted a little bit. Christian Norgard came in, and that basically left Damsgaard out. So you brought it was Janelt Jensen as the two midfield aides. Janelt's to me just a little more hesitant, a little more risk averse, I guess you can say. And once Lewis Potter and once Damsgaard came on, I thought Brentford were a little bit better at playing through lines, trying to be a little more uh, uh, risk taking, I guess you can say. But man, what a couple of games it's been for Sean Dyche and Everton. Two back-to-back wins over Forest, Liverpool, and then you win here, so 3 wins in a row. And no one's going to worry where Everton are going to be now. And if they keep this stretch up, who knows? Maybe they can finish in like 11th spot. Um, but I mean, credit to Dyche because I was really worried about them after the Chelsea win because you started to look, they conceded lots of goals. Yeah, everyone keeps saying, "Oh, they're so good defensively," but you dropped six to Chelsea. Didn't have Beto. Betos has been, basically a miss as far as a signing. Kevin Lewin's played like 4 games all year. Where were the goals gonna come from? You saw Mini actually get the, start in this game, and, he did some good things, but he didn't necessarily look like he was going to score for them. So Everton still need to figure out, at least, going forward, where to figure out as far as, the striker options. But hey, credit to Dyche. I've been, someone that's doubted him all year, and, he's turned around and had, played a blinder. Good for him, good for Everton. Another thing too, the reason why I was really doubting them in the beginning of the season was Tarkowski was played, and it was someone like, it wasn't McNeil. It was, Michael Keane, I believe, or it was someone else that was in the center back. It wasn't Braithwaite. Braithwaite coming into the side, I think has been single-handedly kept them up. Pickford's been Pickford, and, Mikolenko has been able to play most of the year on the left, and he's done quite well for them as well. McNeil has kind of showed up in moments and been special in moments. Garner has been good. Idrissa Gueye hasn't always been picked. It's been Onana, it's been someone else. Idrissa Gueye has come in and actually, he got a goal, big goal for Forest as well. And he gets the goal here, so he's able to award Sean Dyche for kind of keeping the faith there. But this game was quite drastic, quite dull. 8 to 8 shots for Everton. Everton looked the better team, but only one on target. Brentford with 10 and 4. It really wasn't. It was very. It was a game where like everyone was kind of walking. Everyone just kind of knew where they were at, and so that's kind of just where you get. And I understand because one thing I want to say is with yours coming up, you don't really want anyone to get hurt just doing something to try to please fans in a meaningless game. Essentially, points are points, but it doesn't really matter if you finish 15th, if you finish 16th, or if you finish like 11th. So, and then we'll move on to Fulham and Crystal Palace. It just goes on to win, or it goes on to a 1-1 draw by Rodrigo Munoz. Has been a pretty good story for them. He's on 9 goals, could end with double-digit goals, and he only got starts back in January. So that's been a pretty good story for him. And then Jeffrey Schlupp with an amazing individual goal. But one thing to talk about here, I mean, Palace also had fun versus Newcastle. And they scored 5 versus West Ham. So Oliver Glasnow is starting to get this team cooking a little bit. But uh, it wasn't the most exciting lineup because there was no Eze. Eze apparently got a knock in training, so we weren't able to see Ulise and Eze, unfortunately. But one player that keeps showing up is this guy Adam Wharton, who is a 20-year-old Englishman, played in the center of the pitch, central midfielder, and to me, he's got. Anytime you like watch highlights, I had haven't actually watched full game other than Liverpool game or like City. I saw the City game. He keeps popping up as someone that's making clever line breaking passes through the middle of the field. Keeps doing it over and over again. Not a lot of Englishmen do this. I'm thinking of like going forward. Uh, it's not going to be. You're going to need Rice and someone next to him. In Southgate's kind of setup, or someone after Southgate. To me, Adam Wharton has a chance here. I don't know if he'll always be at Palace, but Ulise and Eze or is going to be kind of the looks where it comes to potential suitors to maybe make a bid to get them off Palace. I think there's something with Adam Wharton as well. We've only seen he was brought in back in January from the Championship. Didn't really know anything about him, but he's been in the U20, U19 like English ranks. So he's been a player at least in that respect. But he looks for being as young as he is as well. I thought he was very good for Liverpool, very good for City as well. And just he continues at least in highlights, he continues to show up. He makes the right decisions, gets the ball quickly out of his feet. Had a shot in this game that just screamed at the bar. He looks, at least as far as the future goes, he looks quite good. And you think about it's probably not going to be Will Hughes, but you think about Palace next year. If they were to keep this kind of core together, we'll see what they do in the summertime. But Elise and Eze, maybe they keep them somehow. I mean, both are still young, and then you have Adam Wharton and maybe Decore. You could check Decore back. This could maybe be something. We'll have to. I mean, Mateta didn't have his best game in this game. Unfortunately for him, he missed a pretty bad sitter. But he's played quite good for the last couple of weeks. But at least and Edward hasn't necessarily been the most in favor. Palace also have a lot of youngsters. Palace have Mateus Franca, and they have Raksaki. to think about. So we'll see what Glasgow is able to do as far as youth development. So all of a sudden, Palace has gone from maybe fearing every single year, being dread that, "Oh, we're just gonna stay up by the skin of our teeth," to maybe having some promise and future. But that'll depend on how them being able to keep a lot of their players. And then, with Fulham, not really anything to play for, and you actually saw it in the lineup. Tosin doesn't want to continue his contract, and Tosin's a very good defender, so we'll see if someone tries to pick him up. Uh, Diop, was played instead because of that, but the thing that's interesting is Paulinho still played. And if you're going to sell Paulinho in the summertime, you don't really want these players to be hurt. That hurts your sell-on value. Uh, so we'll see what happens at least far as there's not really anything for Fulham to play for, down the stretch, as well. And so we're probably going to see some interesting lineups going forward. Some more youngsters, maybe getting shots. So that's kind of where we're at as far as this part of the season. And then that's kind of just where we're at. And then the last game, Newcastle do go on to thump Sheffield. I think it was like 5-1. Sheffield actually. What's funny enough is uh, they had the lead, the first, like, 5 minutes with Admahanovic. I can't say names. And then, uh, they had a chance to actually, add on to that lead and just, I think Bremerton Diaz had a shot from close, and, I think Bogle, as well, and, just, they weren't that's kinda just been Sheffield. They've shown to be competitive towards the end, but not it hasn't been, all the way through, and they were leading Manchester United, 2 times, but, again, you just to avoid being the first team to go down, you actually have to. It's not enough to be able to be competitive anymore. You actually have to win games. You have to get the max points, and they weren't able to do it. And then Newcastle were thoroughly manhandled by Crystal Palace in the midweek. So you assumed Eddie Howe would get his team to respond, and he did. Another thing too is we saw different lineup a little bit. So we saw Lewis Hall and Livermento back for the fullbacks. So Fabian Schär and Dan Burn. Dan Burns has been moved from being a fullback to actually being a center back, and for the most part, he was still getting cooked a little bit. Sheffield had no problems getting behind him, but in the end, there was too much. Anderson, Longstaff, and Bruno in the midfield, and then Murphy, Ishak, and Gordon. Murphy had a very good game, creating a number of looks, and then Ishak gets two, one with